Welcome, brave souls, to the winding railways and foggy valleys of Georgia, where the whistle of a train carries through the night like a ghostly lament. Some tracks are more than paths for locomotives, they're conduits for spirits, tragedies, and memories that refuse to fade. Tonight, we travel along the 25 haunted train tracks in Georgia, where ghosts still ride, where phantom trains roar through the darkness, spectral conductors check invisible tickets, and the echoes of the past rattle through the rails. The Big Shanty Line in Kennesaw, Georgia, carries a reputation that stretches far beyond its historic railways. Though it once thrived as a hub of commerce and travel, today the tracks are mostly abandoned, overgrown, and silent by daylight. Yet as night falls, the area takes on a spectral life of its own. Visitors and locals alike have reported eerie occurrences that defy explanation, tied to what has become known as the Big Shanty Ghost Train. Witnesses describe hearing the shrill whistle of a locomotive echoing through the night, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails where no train has run for decades, and glimpses of ghostly locomotives speeding along abandoned tracks. Some claim that the spectral trains carry passengers who disappeared long ago, trapped in an endless journey between life and the afterlife. The reports begin subtly. As dusk settles over the surrounding woods and old rail beds, an unexpected sound often rises above the quiet. It starts as a distant rumble, faint but insistent, growing louder until it resembles the unmistakable approach of a train. The whistle is the most chilling part, a high keening call that seems both mournful and urgent, carried over empty fields and through the skeletal remains of the once busy station. Hikers, night walkers, and even local residents have stopped in their tracks, hearts pounding, certain they are hearing a train, but when they rush toward the sound, they find nothing but silent rails, twisted and unused for years. Some witnesses go further, claiming visual encounters with the phantom locomotives themselves, in the pale glow of moonlight or through the mist that often hangs over the tracks. They describe enormous, shadowy engines moving at impossible speeds, lights glinting where headlights once shone, and spectral smoke curling from their stacks. The trains are said to appear fully formed, complete with ghostly carriages, yet the closer an observer approaches, the more the shapes blur, flicker, and vanish entirely. There are accounts of the cars filled with translucent figures, passengers seated as if unaware of the world outside, staring blankly ahead, trapped in some eternal journey along forgotten rails. The eerie sounds are not limited to the whistle. Many who experienced the haunting report hearing the clatter of wheels on the rails, the screech of brakes, and the hiss of steam, all coming from sections of track long abandoned. Some describe feeling vibrations beneath their feet, as though the ground itself is reacting to the passage of the spectral locomotive. Campers near the old railway have recounted nights spent listening to phantom couplings and clanging metal, their nerves fraying as the sounds grow louder, only to vanish abruptly, leaving an unnatural silence that presses against the mind. Whispers are another consistent feature of the haunting. Some say that voices drift from the trains, faint conversations in voices that have not been heard in decades. Names are called, sometimes in warning, sometimes in lament. A few witnesses claim the voices are those of passengers who disappeared mysteriously in the line's operational days, their presence forever tied to the spectral locomotives. The combination of auditory and visual phenomena creates an immersive and unnerving experience, convincing many that the Big Shanty Ghost Train is not merely legend but a lingering echo of a past era, replaying its final journeys endlessly. Local history provides a haunting context for these experiences. The Big Shanty Line, established during the expansion of railroads in the 19th century, was a lifeline for commerce, travelers, and industry. Yet it also witnessed tragedy, derailments, accidents, and mysterious disappearances that left families searching for answers and left some passengers unaccounted for. Over time, tales of ghostly trains and restless spirits began to circulate, blending with folklore and eyewitness accounts. Today, the haunting is as much a part of the region's identity as the historic tracks themselves, drawing thrill seekers, paranormal investigators, and curious travelers eager to witness the inexplicable. Encounters with the big shanty ghost train vary in intensity. Some people hear only the distant whistle, a spectral warning that fades as quickly as it appeared. Others report more direct experiences, glimpsing shadowy locomotives crossing the tracks, seeing the silhouettes of passengers through ghostly windows, or feeling the vibrations and tremors of a train that is not physically present. A number of accounts describe sudden cold drafts when the train passes, as if the air itself reacts to the presence of the spectral machinery. These experiences leave witnesses shaken, and many choose to leave the area rather than remain near the tracks after nightfall. Even wildlife appears affected. Animals in the vicinity, dogs, birds, and small mammals sometimes react to the unseen trains, barking at empty spaces, taking flight from silent areas, or freezing in place as if sensing an unseen force moving nearby. Such reactions reinforce the impression that the haunting is not only visible and audible to humans, but also perceptible to the natural world, further blurring the boundary between reality and the supernatural. Despite its eerie reputation, the Big Shanty Line remains a destination for those drawn to history, mystery, and the unknown. During the day, the old tracks and surrounding landscape offer a glimpse into the past, with remnants of rail ties, overgrown platforms, and the occasional rusted piece of equipment. But as night falls, the legend comes alive. The whistle pierces the darkness, the wheels clatter on empty rails, and the ghostly trains race past, filled with passengers trapped in perpetual transit. The haunting leaves an indelible impression, a blend of history, tragedy, and the supernatural, making the Big Shanty Ghost Train one of Kennesaw's most enduring and chilling mysteries. Atlanta's terminal tracks, once a bustling hub of freight and industry, have long carried a reputation for more than their historical significance. Located near the old freight yards, the tracks stretch through tunnels, sidings, and abandoned loading areas, many of which have been left to decay over decades. By day, the area appears deserted, but ordinary, a maze of rusting rails, weathered wooden ties, and crumbling platforms. Yet those who linger into the evening often report a far different experience, one that has earned the terminal tracks a reputation as a haunted site. Sudden cold drafts, echoing footsteps in empty tunnels, and fleeting shadows are common accounts, with some witnesses claiming that the ghosts of laborers who perished during the construction of the railways still roam the tracks, bound to the labor they once performed. Visitors describe the first signs of the haunting as subtle. A sudden chill brushes past, seemingly out of nowhere, along stretches of tracks that should be warm in the late afternoon or early evening. The cold is not explained by the environment. There are no crosswinds or gaps in shade that could account for it. It strikes unpredictably, sometimes along open rail lines, sometimes deep inside the tunnels that pierce the landscape. The drafts are often accompanied by the sensation of being watched, an uneasy awareness that someone or something is nearby, despite the absence of any living presence. For explorers and rail enthusiasts who venture into these areas after hours, the combination of sudden temperature changes and silence creates an immediate feeling of tension. Footsteps are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Many visitors recount hearing the sound of boots striking gravel or wooden planks, approaching from behind or echoing down long corridors, only to disappear when investigated. The tunnels, with their natural acoustics, amplify these sounds, making them seem closer or more numerous than they might actually be. In some accounts, the footsteps are steady and purposeful, as though a worker is moving along the tracks with unfinished business, while in other reports, the rhythm is erratic, starting and stopping unpredictably. Those who follow the sounds report reaching empty spaces, abandoned rail cars, or silent platforms, further reinforcing the sense that the echoes belong to those who are no longer living. Shadows add a visual layer to the haunting. Observers frequently describe dark shapes flitting across their peripheral vision, only to vanish when looked at directly. These shadows are seen in the tunnels, along the tracks, and near loading areas. Some witnesses claim to see the vague outline of a figure moving heavy loads, bending over workstations, or walking along the rails. The forms are indistinct, lacking detail, yet their movements appear deliberate and human-like. The sight of these fleeting silhouettes often triggers a visceral fear, compelling visitors to retreat rather than investigate further. The history of Atlanta's terminal tracks contributes to the reports of haunting. During the construction and operation of the rail yards in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, countless laborers endured grueling conditions, long hours, and hazardous work. Accidents were not uncommon. Injuries and fatalities occurred from falls, moving trains, collapsing structures, and poorly maintained equipment. Over time, these tragedies became intertwined with the local lore, leaving the impression that the spirits of those who perished continued to linger, tied to the tracks where they once labored. Locals often recount tales of apparitions dressed in work clothes, carrying tools, or walking along the rails in places long abandoned. Auditory experiences extend beyond footsteps. Some visitors report hearing the distant rumble of trains that are no longer present, the clatter of rails under imaginary wheels, and metallic sounds reminiscent of tools striking machinery. These phantom noises, combined with the echoing tunnels, create a surreal environment that can feel almost alive. The interplay between sound, shadow, and the physical landscape produces an immersive effect, making it difficult for those present to discern reality from apparition. The tunnels themselves seem to amplify the haunting. Their narrow corridors, high ceilings, and brick or concrete walls create natural acoustics that carry and distort sounds. Whispers, footsteps, and clanking noises appear to originate from multiple directions at once. Some witnesses describe hearing faint murmurs, names, short commands, or fragmented conversations carried through the tunnels. The voices are never fully intelligible, yet they leave the unmistakable impression of human presence. For those who linger too long, the combination of cold drafts, sounds, and shadows produces a tangible sense of unease, prompting even the most daring explorers to leave before darkness fully settles. The impact of these experiences extends beyond the immediate moment. Visitors report lingering unease long after leaving the site. The sensation of unseen eyes watching, footsteps following, or shadows flitting in corners persists in memory, coloring their perception of other deserted industrial areas. Some return with cameras or recording equipment, hoping to capture evidence of the haunting. Yet many report that the phenomena remain fleeting, teasing, and elusive, visible only to the human senses. Despite the unsettling reputation, Atlanta terminal tracks remain a place of historical significance and curiosity. During the day, they serve as a reminder of the city's industrial past, with remnants of rail lines, sidings, and freight areas preserved in varying degrees of decay. But after dusk, the tracks reveal another layer of spectral echo of the labor, lives, and tragedies that unfolded along these rails. Sudden cold drafts, shadowy figures, and the sound of phantom footsteps combine to create an environment that is both unnerving and captivating. The Chattahoochee Rail in Columbus, Georgia, is a historic line once bustling with activity, now a corridor steeped in mystery and haunted lore. During its peak, the rail served as a vital link for freight and passenger traffic, carrying goods and people across the region. Over time, however, parts of the line were abandoned, leaving stretches of overgrown tracks, rusted ties, and derelict signals. Despite the quiet that blankets the area during the day, the rail comes alive in the imaginations of those who visit after dusk. Travelers report hearing phantom train sounds, witnessing lights moving along deserted rails, and even glimpsing ghostly figures waving from the shadows. Locals insist that the spirits of former railroad workers linger along the Chattahoochee Rail, checking tracks that no longer serve trains, ensuring that the old line remains tended in ways that defy explanation. The first signs of the haunting often come audibly. As night falls, many visitors describe hearing the unmistakable rumble of wheels rolling along rails, the clanging of metal, and the deep, resonant whistle of a locomotive approaching from nowhere. These sounds are particularly unsettling because they occur in places where the tracks are clearly unused and where no modern trains pass. The whistle is often described as high-pitched, almost mournful, cutting across the darkness with an eerie persistence. Some people hear the rhythmic thump of wheels in a steady cadence, as though a train is passing just out of view. Yet, when they rush toward the sound, the rails are empty, and the night remains still. Visual phenomena accompany the auditory experiences. Lights are often seen flickering along stretches of track, moving as if a train is approaching, only to vanish before observers can fully focus on them. These apparitions are described as faint glows, sometimes the pale beam of a headlight, other times the soft, ghostly illumination of cars or lanterns that once guided rail workers along the line. Witnesses have reported lights that seem to travel along the rails, following the curves and bends, then disappearing suddenly at junctions where the tracks have long been removed. The effect is disorienting, giving the impression of movement and life where no physical presence exists. Perhaps the most unsettling reports involve ghostly figures along the tracks. Some witnesses claim to see men in period work, attire vests, caps, and overalls appearing to inspect rails, lift imaginary tools, or wave at passing vehicles. These figures are often fleeting, glimpsed from the corner of the eye, and vanish when observers turn directly toward them. In some accounts, the specters seem aware of the living, acknowledging their presence with subtle gestures before resuming their endless work. Locals say these are the spirits of railroad workers who died along the line, either in accidents or from the hardships of early labor, bound forever to the tracks they once maintained. The rail's abandoned infrastructure intensifies the haunting. Overgrown tracks, rusted signals, and decaying trestles provide a haunting backdrop for these experiences. Tunnels and cuttings amplify sounds, carrying echoes that seem to come from every direction. Observers frequently report hearing phantom footsteps alongside or beneath them, footsteps that are steady, purposeful, and disturbingly human. Sometimes these sounds coincide with lights or fleeting figures, creating an immersive experience that blurs the line between reality and apparition. Whispers are another common feature. People walking along the rails or nearby paths often report hearing voices in the wind, faint conversations that seem to float through the trees or the rail cuttings. These murmurs are rarely intelligible, but they carry an unmistakable sense of presence and purpose. Some claim the voices call out names, warn of danger, or echo commands that once guided work crews during the line's operational years. The combination of sound, shadow, and movement fosters a chilling atmosphere, as though the past has not entirely released the land from its hold. Even wildlife reacts to the unexplained phenomena. Dogs, birds, and small animals often appear agitated in the presence of the invisible forces along the rails. Dogs may bark at empty spaces or refuse to continue along a path, while birds suddenly scatter as though sensing an approaching entity. These reactions reinforce the feeling that the haunting is not limited to human perception, that something unseen interacts with both the natural world and the living observers who wander the tracks. The history of the Chattahoochee Rail provides context for these supernatural accounts. Constructed in the 19th century, the line was central to regional commerce and travel. Work was grueling, accidents were common, and many laborers suffered and died along the tracks, leaving a legacy of tragedy entwined with the land. Over time, stories of ghostly locomotives, spectral workers, and mysterious lights became part of the local lore. Tales were passed down through generations, blending eyewitness reports with legend, until the haunting became inseparable from the identity of the Chattahoochee Rail. Encounters vary in intensity. Some people experience fleeting phenomena, a cold draft along a trail, a distant whistle, or the shadow of a figure passing by. Others describe more direct experiences, phantom trains racing along abandoned sections of track, spectral workers tending to rails, and lights moving along curves and junctions. Many who venture to the rail at night report an overwhelming sense of being watched, the feeling that the spirits are observing their every step, ensuring that the old line is not neglected. Despite its haunting, the Chattahoochee Rail remains a destination for history enthusiasts, paranormal investigators, and thrill seekers. By day, the tracks provide a glimpse into the past, with remnants of ties, trestles, and loading platforms still visible. After dark, however, the area transforms, revealing a world of shadows, lights, and spectral sounds. Phantom locomotives, ghostly figures, and whispers in the wind creates an environment that is both unnerving and compelling, making the rail an enduring sight of fascination and fear. Macon Junction, located in the heart of Georgia, was once a bustling hub of rail activity, connecting countless towns and industries across the region. In its prime, the station and its surrounding tracks were alive with the sounds of locomotives, the clatter of wheels over rails, and the constant movement of workers tending to the busy junction. Today, much of the station lies abandoned, tracks partially overgrown, and platforms crumbling, yet the site continues to captivate visitors, not for its historic significance alone, but for the eerie encounters reported by those who linger after dusk. Travelers and urban explorers alike have described spectral whistles piercing the night, phantom lights gliding along deserted rails, and shadowy figures crossing the tracks where no trains run. Many locals believe the spirit of a conductor who died decades ago still patrols the rails, overseeing the junction as he did in life. The first sign of the haunting is often auditory. Visitors walking near the tracks after dark frequently report hearing the shrill, unmistakable whistle of a train approaching, even though the tracks have been unused for years. The sound cuts through the night with a haunting clarity, echoing along abandoned sidings and empty platforms. Some describe the whistle as sorrowful, almost as if mourning the passing of an era long gone. The sound often precedes other phenomena, signaling that something unseen is nearby. Footsteps on the wooden platforms, the metallic clang of wheels over rails, and the rhythmic hum of an invisible locomotive combine to create an atmosphere of unshakable tension. Lights are another common element in the haunting of Macon Junction. Observers frequently report glowing orbs or faint headlight beams moving along the rails, as if a train is speeding through the station. These lights often appear out of nowhere, tracing the curves of the tracks before vanishing at junctions or overgrown crossings. Sometimes the glow hovers in place, pulsing like a lantern carried by someone unseen. Witnesses describe feeling drawn toward the lights, only to find empty tracks and silence when they arrive. These phantom lights are often accompanied by fleeting shadows, glimpsed from the corner of the eye, giving the impression of figures moving along the rails. Shadowy figures are among the most unnerving phenomena at Macon Junction. Several visitors report seeing the vague outlines of men in period railroad attire, walking along the tracks, tending to switches, or even waving at passing vehicles. The figures are indistinct, often disappearing when observed directly, yet their movements are deliberate and human-like. Many believe these are the spirits of workers who died during the junction's operation. Laborers, engineers, and conductors whose lives ended abruptly yet left them bound to the rails. One particularly persistent figure is said to be a conductor who died decades ago. Witnesses claim to see him pacing the platform, hat in hand, checking the tracks as though ensuring the station runs smoothly, despite the absence of trains. The atmosphere of Macon Junction amplifies these experiences. The station's old infrastructure, crumbling platforms, rusted rails, and dilapidated sidings provides an eerie backdrop for ghostly activity. The tunnels, cuttings, and overhead bridges create natural acoustics that carry and distort sounds, making footsteps echo unnaturally, and whispers seem to come from multiple directions. Visitors often report cold drafts in the midst of warm summer nights, a sensation that seems to follow them along the tracks or through the station buildings. This combination of sensory experience is sound, sight, and temperature creates a deeply immersive and unsettling environment. Auditory phenomena extend beyond whistles and footsteps. Some visitors describe hearing fragments of conversation or commands, as if crews are coordinating tasks long after the junction ceased operation. Others report the rhythmic clatter of rails under phantom wheels, punctuated by metallic bangs and the hiss of brakes. The sounds are vivid and precise, yet often disappear when approached, leaving an empty platform and a heavy silence in their wake. These experiences can be disorienting, creating the impression that time itself is distorted at Macon Junction, where past and present coexist in unsettling proximity. Witnesses often speak of an overwhelming feeling of being watched. The conductor and other spectral workers appear aware of the living, their presence acknowledged through subtle gestures or fleeting glances. Some report the sense that unseen eyes follow their movements, that every step along the platform or sidings is observed by presences tied to the junction's long history. Even wildlife reacts strangely. Dogs bark at empty spaces, birds scatter suddenly, and other animals behave as though sensing something invisible nearby. The history of Macon Junction provides context for these hauntings. Built in the late 19th century, the junction was central to regional commerce and transportation, relying on the labor of countless workers under often harsh conditions. Accidents and fatalities were common, leaving behind a legacy of hardship and tragedy. Local lore has long held that the spirits of those who died along the tracks remained tethered to the site, unable to leave the rails they once tended. Tales of ghostly conductors, wandering laborers, and phantom trains have been passed down through generations, blending eyewitness reports with legend to create a rich tapestry of haunted history. Encounters at Macon Junction range from subtle to intense. Some visitors experience fleeting phenomena, a cold breeze on a warm night, a distant whistle, or the shadow of a figure slipping behind a building. Others describe more direct contact, ghostly trains speeding along abandoned tracks, spectral workers performing tasks, or the conductor himself pacing the platform in silent vigilance. Many leave with a lasting impression of unease, the sensation that the past has not entirely released the present. The Augusta Freight Line, once a vital artery of commerce and transportation, now lies mostly abandoned, a shadow of its former self, stretching through overgrown fields, worn ballast, and rusted rails. The line evokes the memory of a bustling era when freight trains carried goods and people across Georgia. Today, the quiet that blankets the tracks during daylight hours belies the eerie activity reported after dusk. Locals and visitors alike have recounted chilling experiences, the sound of chains rattling without cause, sudden apparitions along the rails, and the sight of phantom locomotives emerging from the mist. Many claim that the spirits of long-dead workers linger here, their presence a haunting echo of labor, tragedy, and unresolved stories from decades past. Auditory phenomena are often the first sign of the Augusta Freight Line's spectral activity. Travelers report hearing the jarring sound of chains rattling, sometimes accompanied by the metallic clank of tools being dropped or handled. These noises can occur anywhere along the tracks, yet no human presence is ever visible. Some describe the sound of rail spikes being hammered or the faint rumble of a train approaching, only to find the tracks deserted when they investigate. Whispers are common, carried on the wind, often calling out names or issuing vague commands, as if the spirits are continuing their work long after their mortal lives ended. Witnesses say the sound of footsteps echoes along the rails in a steady rhythm, suggesting the presence of workers patrolling, inspecting, or moving freight, even when no one is there. Visual experiences along the Augusta Freight Line are equally unsettling. Many visitors report sudden apparitions appearing out of the fog or mist that often blankets the tracks at night. Figures in period work clothing, including hats and vests typical of early 20th century laborers, are described walking along the rails, tending to invisible cargo, or disappearing abruptly when observed directly. Some witnesses have seen ghostly locomotives, headlights glowing faintly, moving slowly through the mist, before vanishing into nothingness. These trains appear real at first glance, with billowing phantom smoke and clattering wheels, but upon approach, they dissolve as though they were never there at all. The combination of sound, shadow, and light creates a chilling, immersive experience that leaves visitors questioning what is real and what is an echo of the past. The history of the freight line provides a context that explains, if only partially, the persistent hauntings. Built in the late 19th century, the Augusta Freight Line was an essential conduit for goods ranging from cotton to manufactured products. Construction and operation were grueling, and accidents were unfortunately common. Many workers lost their lives along the tracks, whether through missteps, machinery accidents, or misadventures in the darkness of night. According to local lore, the spirits of these men remain tied to the line, performing the work they were never able to finish in life, or wandering the tracks in search of safety and closure. The terrain surrounding the tracks amplifies the haunting. Overgrown weeds, crumbling ties, and rusted rails create a decayed industrial landscape, perfect for ghostly illusions. Nighttime fog often rolls in from nearby marshes or lowlands, obscuring the path ahead and muting familiar sounds, turning every creak and whistle into something ominous. Tunnels, old bridges, and rail cuttings carry sounds in strange ways, making distant noises seem close and adding to the sense that unseen presences are moving around the observer. The wind itself often carries whispers that appear to emanate from nowhere, chilling the air and the hearts of those brave enough to explore the line at night. Several witnesses have reported interactions that feel distinctly personal. Some hikers and explorers recount hearing their names called from the darkness, a voice soft yet insistent, urging them to leave or, in some cases, to follow. Others describe a sense of being watched from both sides of the tracks, as if countless eyes remain fixed upon them, assessing, acknowledging, or warning. Even animals seem affected. Dogs bark at empty spaces, birds flee from unseen disturbances, and small mammals disappear from areas where nothing should threaten them. These reactions reinforce the perception that the hauntings are not merely psychological, but rooted in something tangible. A lingering presence that interacts with both the environment and those who enter it. Many of the line's visitors report the most intense experiences near old loading platforms, where freight cars were once loaded and unloaded. Here, phantom locomotives are most frequently observed, often with ghostly figures climbing ladders or gesturing to one another as if coordinating long-past shipments. Chains rattle along empty hooks, and the faint clanging of metal suggests cargo being secured or moved. Witnesses sometimes feel an oppressive weight in the air, a mixture of cold drafts and an almost palpable sense of history pressing down on them. Encounters along the Augusta freight line vary widely. Some visitors experience subtle phenomena: a cold breeze brushing against the neck, a shadow darting past, or an unexplained light flickering through the fog. Others have more direct contact: phantom trains rushing along the rails, spectral workers performing long-forgotten tasks, or voices calling from the mist, repeating orders and names from a bygone era. These experiences often leave a lasting impression, with many reporting an enduring sense of unease or fascination long after leaving the site. Despite the chilling reports, the Augusta freight line continues to attract curiosity seekers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts. During the day, it is a quiet, decaying relic of industrial ambition, a place to explore and imagine the labor of the past. By night, however, the line transforms into a spectral corridor where shadows move. Sounds echo unnaturally, and the past asserts itself with eerie clarity. Phantom whistles, moving lights, and ghostly workers make the abandoned tracks more than a historical site. They become a living narrative of memory, labor, and loss. The Savannah River Rail, winding along the banks of Georgia's iconic river, carries a quiet history of industry, commerce, and, as many claim, lingering spirits. Once a thriving corridor for trains transporting goods and passengers, much of the line is now abandoned, its rails rusting and ties overgrown. Yet despite the decay, those who walk or drive near the tracks after dusk report phenomena that cannot be explained by natural causes. Ghostly lights hover above the rails, disembodied whistles echo across the water, and spectral trains glide along the tracks, only to vanish suddenly into the fog that frequently rolls in from the river. Witnesses suggest that these apparitions are the spirits of passengers who met untimely deaths, replaying their final journeys in an endless loop, their presence lingering as a solemn reminder of the past. The first encounters often involve sound. Travelers walking near the river at twilight frequently hear the high-pitched, mournful whistle of a train approaching, though no locomotive is visible. The whistle is described as both urgent and sorrowful, echoing along the banks in a way that seems almost alive. Following the sound, Visitors sometimes hear the rhythmic clatter of wheels along rails, doors opening and closing, and distant shouts or murmurs from unseen passengers. Some report faint echoes of conversation, fragments of dialogue suspended in time, as if the past has temporarily resurfaced to perform a tragic scene. These auditory experiences are often accompanied by sudden, inexplicable drops in temperature, a chill that cuts through even warm summer air and signals that something otherworldly is near. Visual phenomena are equally unsettling. Ghostly lights, often described as faint orbs or moving lantern-like glows, appear to hover above or along the rails. Witnesses have reported these lights tracing the tracks, approaching from the river or disappearing into nearby trees, giving the impression of locomotives traveling along routes long abandoned. Some claim to see entire ghost trains, locomotives, cars, and shadowy figures of passengers moving slowly along the tracks. The apparitions are unnervingly realistic. The outlines of cars, the shimmer of lights in windows, and the presence of figures seated or standing as if expecting a journey to continue. Yet as one approaches, the trains dissolve into mist, leaving nothing but empty rails and a profound silence. Shadowy figures are a constant feature along the Savannah River Rail. Many witnesses report glimpsing passengers dressed in early 20th century clothing, wandering along platforms or walking along the tracks. These figures are often partially transparent, their movements slow and deliberate, suggesting a purpose carried over from life. Some describe seeing figures staring into the river, as if reliving a moment before a tragedy struck, while others notice the figures moving toward the tracks, boarding trains that exist only in spectral form. One persistent tale involves the spirits of passengers who drowned during an accident years ago, now replaying their final journey along the water's edge. Observers describe a sense of sorrow and inevitability surrounding these figures, as though the events of the past cannot be undone. The Savannah River itself plays a central role in the haunting. The river's fog often rolls over the tracks at dusk, reducing visibility and creating a thick, ghostly atmosphere. This natural phenomenon amplifies the eerie experiences, distorting sounds and shadows, and making the spectral trains and lights appear more vivid. The fog also seems to carry whispers from the past, soft murmurs and cries that float along the banks, sometimes seeming to call the names of those walking nearby. Witnesses frequently describe a sensation of being watched, an awareness that unseen eyes follow their movements along the abandoned tracks and riverbanks. The combination of sound, sight, and environment creates an immersive experience that blurs the line between reality and the spectral world. Historical context gives weight to these hauntings. In its operational years, the Savannah River Rail was a vital link for commerce and travel, connecting inland towns to the coast. Accidents were not uncommon, and several reports indicate that passengers were lost to the river during storms or derailments. These tragedies, combined with the labor-intensive work of operating and maintaining the line, are said to have left a lingering imprint on the landscape. Locals recount tales passed down through generations, describing ghost trains, phantom passengers, and lights that appear along the abandoned rails, reinforcing the idea that the spirits of those who perished remain tied to the line, unable to leave until their journeys are acknowledged. Encounters at the Savannah River Rail vary from subtle to intense. Some visitors hear only distant whistles or see a faint glow through the mist, feeling a chill or noticing shadows out of the corner of their eye. Others experience more dramatic phenomena, full ghost trains moving along the tracks, apparitions of passengers boarding or disembarking, or voices calling out from nowhere. The combination of auditory and visual cues creates a sense that the past and present coexist along these abandoned rails, a liminal space where the memories of those who died are made manifest. Even the environment reacts to the haunting. Animals become agitated without cause. Dogs bark at unseen presences. Birds flee in sudden panic, and small creatures vanish from areas where no predator is visible. The river itself seems to respond, fog thickening or water rippling as if stirred by invisible hands. Visitors often describe an overwhelming feeling of being part of the landscape's history, as though stepping onto the tracks connects them to the lives, labors, and losses of those who came before. Despite the chilling reputation, the Savannah River Rail attracts historians, rail enthusiasts, and paranormal seekers alike. By day, it is a place of quiet history, a reminder of commerce, travel, and industrial development. By night, however, it becomes a realm of the spectral, where ghostly trains, floating lights, and shadowy figures give a tangible presence to the past. Phantom whistles, disappearing locomotives, and apparitions of passengers replaying long-forgotten journeys make the abandoned tracks more than a relic. They transform it into a living memory of tragedy, labor, and unfulfilled journeys. The Milledgeville Loop, an abandoned stretch of railway winding through forests and fields near the historic town of Milledgeville, carries an air of quiet desolation by day and eerie activity by night. Once a bustling conduit for both goods and passengers, the line now lies dormant, its rails overgrown, ties rotting, and stations long since closed. Yet despite the apparent stillness, locals and travelers alike report unusual and unsettling experiences after dusk. Spectral trains are said to glide silently along the tracks. Ghostly figures walk along the rails, and phantom sounds whistles, wheels clattering, and the creak of wooden cars echo into the darkness. Many claim that these are not mere illusions, but the spirits of passengers and workers replaying moments from long ago, trapped along the loop in an endless spectral performance. Auditory phenomena often announce the presence of the supernatural along the Milledgeville Loop. Witnesses report the sound of a train whistle piercing the night air, a mournful, distant call that seems impossibly close yet without any visible source. Following the sound, travelers hear the rhythmic clatter of wheels along the rails, the creaking of wooden cars, and faint murmurs of passengers conversing. Some report the abrupt slam of doors or the metallic ring of chains, all occurring without anyone near the tracks. These sounds are accompanied by sudden drops in temperature, cold drafts brushing against the skin, and an oppressive weight in the air, as though the echoes of long-forgotten labor and travel have imprinted themselves on the landscape. Visual encounters intensify the haunting. Visitors describe shadowy figures walking along the rails, often wearing attire from the early 20th century. Men in hats and vests, women in long skirts, and children carrying small satchels appear and vanish without warning, sometimes paused in mid-step, as if aware of an unseen observer. Ghostly trains have been reported moving along the tracks, complete with the dim glow of lanterns in the windows and the faint outline of passengers seated inside. Some witnesses describe seeing the faces of ghostly travelers staring silently at them before dissolving into mist. Others claim that spectral conductors walk alongside the train, performing duties long forgotten, checking non-existent tickets, or gesturing toward passengers who have already disappeared. The geography of the Milledgeville Loop enhances its spectral reputation, stretching through dense woodlands, open fields, and low-lying marshes. The area creates natural conditions for eerie phenomena. Nighttime fog often settles along the tracks, muting sound and bending light, making every shadow appear alive and every distant noise more sinister. Overgrown brush and rusted rails create an atmosphere of decay, and abandoned depots add a sense of history suspended in time. Observers frequently report that shadows seem to move independently of the trees, that lights flicker along the rails with no discernible source, and that whispers ride on the wind, often repeating names or phrases. The combination of environmental elements and lingering energy produces an unsettling experience that feels both real and otherworldly. Historical context offers clues as to why the Milledgeville Loop may be haunted. During its operational years, the railway was vital for commerce, connecting rural communities with larger towns and cities. Accidents were unfortunately frequent. Derailments, collisions, and mishaps during loading and unloading claimed lives, leaving tragedies that may have imprinted themselves on the land. Local lore suggests that passengers lost in these incidents continued to traverse the rails, bound to the moments of their deaths or the journeys they never completed. Stories passed down through generations tell of ghostly trains speeding along the loop at night, figures appearing on platforms that have long since decayed, and apparitions that vanish only when approached. Visitors often report personal interactions with the spirits. Some describe hearing their own names called from the darkness, soft and urgent whispers urging them to leave. Others feel the gaze of unseen eyes following their every step, a sensation that grows more intense near old stations or bridges. Dogs and other animals react strongly to these presences, barking at empty air, fleeing unseen threats, or refusing to enter certain sections of the tracks. Even the wind seems to carry messages from the past, twisting through the trees and rattling rails in ways that suggest deliberate movement, as though the spirits themselves are reaching out to the living. The most common and vivid experiences occur near abandoned depots or loading platforms, where ghost trains are most frequently reported. Witnesses have seen full trains, with cars packed with shadowy passengers, moving slowly along the rails. The faint glow of lanterns in the windows and the outlines of figures inside lend an unsettling realism to the apparitions. Phantom conductors appear to supervise the boarding process, and the sounds of creaking wood, rattling chains, and murmured conversation filled the air. Some describe an overwhelming sense of sorrow and inevitability surrounding these scenes, as though they are witnessing the replay of tragic events that cannot be altered. Encounters along the Milledgeville Loop vary widely. Some visitors experience subtle signs, a shadow flitting past, a cold breeze brushing their neck, or a distant whistle carried on the wind. Others report full manifestations, ghost trains traveling along the tracks, spectral passengers boarding or exiting cars, or conductors checking tickets in empty depots. The combination of auditory, visual, and tactile phenomena creates an immersive experience, leaving many with a lingering sense of unease and fascination long after leaving the site. Despite the haunting, the Milledgeville Loop continues to attract curious travelers, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts. By day, it is a place of history and quiet exploration, a remnant of a bygone era. By night, however, the loop transforms into a liminal space where the boundary between the living and the dead blurs. Phantom whistles, spectral figures, and ghostly trains make the abandoned tracks more than a relic. They become a stage where the past performs continuously, preserving memories of labor, travel, and tragedy. The Athens Depot tracks, once a bustling hub of commerce and travel in the heart of Athens, Georgia, now lie quiet, their rails rusted and the surrounding platforms long abandoned. Yet the area holds a reputation that continues to draw curiosity, as locals and visitors alike have reported strange and unsettling occurrences along the tracks, particularly after dusk. Shadows flit along the rails, lantern lights flicker inexplicably, and ghostly footsteps echo across empty platforms. Some witnesses claim to have seen phantom conductors, clad in early 20th century uniforms, signaling trains that no longer run. These spectral phenomena have earned the Athens Depot tracks a reputation as one of the most haunted sites in the region, where history and the supernatural seem to merge in eerie harmony. Auditory experiences are among the first signs that the tracks are not entirely abandoned. Travelers walking near the depot at night often hear the sound of footsteps on wooden platforms and steel rails, yet when they turn to investigate, no one is there. The rhythm of the footsteps can vary, sometimes soft and measured, other times hurried, as if passengers or workers are racing to catch a train long gone. Phantom whistles pierce the night, a high-pitched cry that carries across the tracks and into the surrounding fields, startling those who hear it. The echoes of chains rattling, doors opening and slamming, and distant shouts add layers of realism to these spectral encounters. Often, these sounds are accompanied by sudden drops in temperature, a chill that seems to cling to the body, signaling the presence of forces unseen. Visual phenomena along the Athens Depot tracks are just as compelling. Witnesses have described flickering lights hovering above the rails or moving slowly along the platforms. Some report the glow of lanterns appearing and disappearing without a discernible source, casting long, shifting shadows that seem almost human in shape. Shadowy figures, partially transparent and often dressed in early 20th century attire, are said to move deliberately along the tracks. Men in conductor uniforms appear to check for boarding passengers, while others seem to walk the rails, occasionally pausing to look out across the fields. Phantom passengers, seated or standing near non-existent train cars, have been observed staring silently before vanishing, leaving a haunting sense of unfinished business lingering in the air. The environment of the Athens depot tracks amplifies these spectral occurrences. The depot, though long abandoned, retains much of its original architecture. Wooden platforms, signal towers, and loading areas that create pockets of shadow and opportunities for reflection. Overgrown grasses and encroaching trees frame the rails, giving the area a sense of isolation, while evening fog often rolls in from nearby lowlands, muting sound and bending light. The combination of decaying structures, natural fog, and ambient silence creates a liminal space where the past feels tangible, and even the faintest flicker of light or shadow can appear otherworldly. Many who have walked the tracks at night describe an overwhelming sensation of being observed, as though the spirits of workers, conductors, and passengers still patrol their old domains. Historical context adds weight to these hauntings. Athens Depot was once a vital center for transportation and trade, a place where townspeople and travelers alike converged to send and receive goods or embark on journeys to distant cities. Accidents and mishaps were not uncommon. Fallen cargo, train derailments, and minor collisions claimed lives or left workers injured, creating a history steeped in labor, risk, and occasional tragedy. Local lore suggests that the spirits of those who perished in these incidents remain bound to the tracks, continuing to fulfill the duties and routines they carried out in life. Tales passed down over generations recount phantom trains, ghostly conductors, and apparitions that vanish only when approached, reinforcing the belief that the past has left an indelible mark on the site. Encounters at the Athens Depot tracks vary from subtle to intense. Some visitors hear nothing more than the distant whistle of a train and feel a cold draft pass across their shoulders, while others witness entire sequences of spectral activity. Lanterns flicker along the rails, shadows walk with deliberate purpose, and ghostly conductors appear to signal to trains that exist only in the imagination. A few have reported seeing entire trains slowly moving along the tracks, with dark silhouettes of passengers seated inside, their faces obscured yet somehow present. These apparitions often dissolve into mist or darkness as one approaches, leaving nothing but the faint echo of a whistle or the soft murmur of a vanished crowd. The Athens Depot tracks are also known for unexpected tactile phenomena. Some visitors report brushes against the arm or shoulder from unseen hands, or the sensation of someone standing close, observing silently. Dogs and other animals are often agitated in these areas, barking in empty air or refusing to venture onto the tracks. The wind itself seems to carry the weight of the past, rustling through trees and old wooden structures in ways that mimic footsteps or whispered speech, amplifying the feeling that the living are intruding on a realm still inhabited by those who came before. Despite its eerie reputation, the Athens Depot tracks continue to draw curiosity from historians, rail enthusiasts, and paranormal investigators. By day, the site is a relic of history, offering glimpses into transportation and commerce of a bygone era. By night, however, the tracks transform into a stage for the spectral, where phantom conductors, ghostly passengers, and flickering lanterns bring history vividly to life. Visitors leave with an uneasy awareness that the past is not entirely gone, that echoes of work, travel, and tragedy persist along the rails, and that some journeys never truly end. The Gainesville Rail Trail, a quiet stretch of abandoned tracks winding through forests and open fields near Gainesville, Georgia, carries an eerie reputation that persists long after the trains stopped running. Once a bustling artery for commerce and travel, the trail is now overgrown with grasses and shrubs, the wooden ties rotting and the steel rails rusting in silence. Yet, despite its apparent abandonment, locals and visitors alike report an array of strange and unsettling phenomena along the trail. Shadowy figures appear along the tracks, phantom whistles echo through the night, and ghostly trains are seen moving along the rails, only to vanish moments later. The Gainesville Rail Trail has become a magnet for those drawn to the unknown, a place where history and the supernatural seem to intertwine. Auditory experiences are often the first signs that something unusual is afoot. Hikers and evening walkers frequently report hearing the distant sound of a train whistle, high-pitched and mournful, resonating through the trees. The sound seems to come from the trail itself, moving closer and then fading away, though no train is visible. Accompanying these whistles are phantom noises of wheels clattering along the rails, the creaking of wooden train cars, and faint shouts or murmurs as if passengers are conversing quietly. Some describe the jolt of sudden metallic clangs or the slam of a non-existent door, making the experience almost tactile. These sounds are often accompanied by cold drafts that snake across the trail, brushing against the skin and heightening the sensation that unseen presences are nearby. Visual sightings on the Gainesville Rail Trail are as compelling as the sounds. Visitors report seeing figures dressed in period uniforms from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, walking the tracks or standing on the platforms that have long since decayed. Phantom conductors appear, checking imaginary tickets or gesturing toward non-existent passengers, while figures in old-fashioned clothing seem to move with purpose along the rails. Some witnesses describe ghostly trains, complete with faint lantern lights glowing from the windows and the shadowy outlines of passengers inside, moving slowly along the trail. These apparitions often vanish suddenly, leaving only the faint echo of a whistle or the creak of rails behind. The environment of the trail amplifies these haunting experiences. Stretching through dense woodlands, marshy lowlands, and open fields, the path creates natural pockets of shadow where light bends strangely. Evening fog frequently settles along the tracks, muting sounds and making even ordinary movements appear sinister. Overgrown brush along the trail can make fleeting shadows seem alive, while empty platforms and decaying rail structures create a sense of history frozen in place. Walkers often report feeling as though unseen eyes are observing them from the tree line, a sensation that grows more intense near bends or where the rails cross abandoned bridges. Even the rustling of leaves in the wind seems to mimic footsteps or whispered speech, reinforcing the presence of forces beyond the living. Historical context adds weight to these encounters. The Gainesville Rail Trail was once a lifeline for local towns, carrying passengers and freight between Gainesville and surrounding areas. Accidents and mishaps were not uncommon. Derailments, cargo spills, and occasional collisions claimed lives and left scars on the land. Local folklore suggests that the spirits of those who perished in these incidents remained bound to the rails, replaying moments of their lives. Journeys cut short, and duties left unfinished. Stories passed down through generations speak of ghostly trains, shadowy figures along the tracks, and apparitions that vanish only when approached, as if maintaining a delicate balance between their world and ours. Encounters vary widely in intensity. Some visitors experience subtle signs, a shadow passing across the rails, a sudden chill, or a whisper carried by the wind. Others report full spectral displays, ghost trains moving along the trail, figures in period uniforms walking with precise purpose, and lanterns flickering in areas with no light source. A few hikers recount seeing entire sequences of events, with ghostly passengers boarding or exiting phantom trains, conductors supervising invisible operations, and the distant echo of whistles marking the passage of time. In every case, the sense of being watched, of history pressing forward invisibly, leaves a lingering unease. Even tactile phenomena are reported along the trail. Some visitors feel brushes against their arms or shoulders, sudden cold spots on the path, or the weight of an unseen presence nearby. Animals, particularly dogs, are often uneasy, barking at empty air or refusing to enter certain sections of the trail. The combination of sound, sight, and sensation creates an immersive experience, leaving many with a strong impression that the trail is inhabited by those who once walked its length in life. Despite its reputation, the Gainesville Rail Trail continues to draw the curious, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts. By day, it is a place of quiet exploration and historical interest, a relic of the railway era. By night, it transforms into a stage for the spectral, where ghostly conductors, wandering figures, and phantom trains bring history vividly to life. Visitors leave the trail with lingering impressions, the echo of whistles, the vision of shadowy passengers, and the sensation of being observed by presences both unseen and unforgotten. The Rome Railroad, an old line threading through the outskirts of Rome, Georgia, has long been a source of fascination and unease. Though trains no longer ply the tracks regularly, the area retains a reputation for strange and unexplainable occurrences. Locals often speak in hushed tones about ghostly phenomena that seem to linger along the rails, a spectral reminder of tragedies long past. Among the most frequently cited incidents are phantom whistles piercing the night air, the clatter of wheels rolling along empty tracks, and shadowy figures that vanish when approached. According to local lore, these occurrences are tied to a fatal train derailment that happened decades ago, leaving behind the restless spirits of passengers and conductors who never made it home. The auditory experiences along the Rome Railroad are striking and often the first indication to visitors that something otherworldly may be present. At dusk or during the stillness of night, walkers and nighttime explorers report hearing the distant sound of a train whistle echoing through the trees and fields. The whistle often rises in pitch and intensity, as if approaching, only to fade away inexplicably. Some have ascribed hearing the rhythmic clatter of train wheels over wooden ties, accompanied by the creaking of cars and the shuffling of feet on metal and wood. These sounds, perfectly synchronized yet originating from nowhere, evoke a chilling sense of presence and purpose. Visual encounters at the Rome Railroad are equally compelling. Witnesses frequently describe shadowy figures moving along the rails or appearing at the edges of nearby trains. Some of these figures are dressed in period attire, uniformed conductors, passengers with hats and coats typical of the early 20th century, walking or standing as if fulfilling their final duties. Phantom trains are also reported, glowing faintly with lantern-like lights from within their carriages, moving slowly along the tracks before vanishing into the night. Witnesses often remark that the trains appear both solid and ethereal at the same time, their forms shifting and disappearing when approached directly, leaving only the echo of the whistle behind. At times, figures are said to peer out of the phantom train windows, their faces indistinct but undeniably human, giving the eerie impression that life continues along the tracks despite decades having passed. The environment of the Rome Railroad amplifies the feeling of unease. Overgrown vegetation lines the rails, and wooden ties decay underfoot, while the surrounding fields and forests create natural pockets of shadow. Evening fog and mist often settle in low areas, distorting light and muffling sound, making any flicker of movement or sound feel magnified. Old signal posts and remnants of platforms provide silhouettes that, in the right conditions, appear animated with ghostly activity. Visitors frequently describe a feeling of being watched, particularly near bends in the track or where the line crosses shallow valleys, as if unseen eyes track their progress and silently assess their intrusion. Even the wind seems to carry whispers, rustling through branches and tall grasses in ways that imitate footsteps or soft speech, further heightening the sensation of a presence beyond the living. The historical context of the Rome Railroad provides chilling insight into why these hauntings are said to persist. The line was once vital to the movement of passengers and goods, connecting Rome with neighboring towns and facilitating commerce and travel across Georgia. However, it was also the site of accidents, most notably a devastating derailment decades ago that claimed numerous lives. Witnesses reported trains leaving the rails in a sudden, violent collapse, passengers thrown from carriages, and conductors trying futilely to manage the chaos. Many of those who perished had unfinished journeys, which local lore suggests tethered their spirits to the tracks. Phantom trains that replay the moment of disaster, and restless figures waiting for passengers who will never arrive. Others describe full spectral events, ghostly trains moving along the rails, figures in early 20th century clothing walking or standing with purpose, and faint lantern lights flickering in the darkness. In many accounts, phantom passengers are visible inside the spectral trains, their silhouettes still engaged in conversation or quietly observing, only to vanish when approached. The repeated appearance and disappearance of trains, as well as the ghostly conductors managing them, creates a sense of timelessness, as if the tragedy of the past continues to unfold night after night. In addition to auditory and visual phenomena, tactile sensations are reported by visitors. Some claim to feel brushes against arms or shoulders, or the presence of unseen bodies close by. The natural sounds of the area wind rustling leaves, small animals scurrying often amplify the sense of the supernatural, making it difficult to distinguish ordinary occurrences from those that might be paranormal. Despite the fear these stories evoke, the Rome Railroad remains a point of fascination for historians, ghost hunters, and curious travelers. By day, the tracks offer a glimpse into the region's industrial past, a quiet place to walk and reflect. By night, however, the scene transforms, with shadowy figures, phantom trains, and spectral conductors bringing history to life in vivid, unsettling ways. Visitors leave with lingering impressions, a whistle echoing in memory, the outline of a ghostly train fading into the darkness, and a sensation that the past never truly departs. The Dalton freight tracks, a relic of Georgia's industrial past, stretch quietly through valleys and wooded hills outside the town of Dalton. Though trains no longer rumble along the rails with the regularity of decades ago, the tracks retain a reputation for strange and unexplained occurrences. Locals speak of ghostly activity that persists along the abandoned line, shadowy figures moving near the tracks, sudden gusts of icy wind that appear without explanation, and the distant sounds of trains rolling over wooden ties where no locomotives exist. The Dalton freight tracks are said to be haunted by the spirits of workers who once maintained the line, as well as passengers and crew who met tragic fates along the rails. Auditory phenomena are among the most frequently reported experiences along the Dalton freight tracks. Visitors describe hearing the clatter of wheels on wooden ties, the rhythmic creaking of freight cars, and the distant metallic clang of couplings being fastened, all echoing through the valleys. These phantom sounds often rise and fall, sometimes approaching as if a train is drawing near, only to disappear completely when approached. Whistles and bells are heard at irregular intervals, startling walkers with their mournful wail. Even more unsettling are reports of whispered voices, as though workers from long ago are conversing nearby, checking rails or issuing orders that no living person can hear. Many hikers and urban explorers also report sudden drops in temperature, a cold breeze sweeping over them in the middle of otherwise still air, heightening the feeling of being in the presence of something unseen. Visual experiences along the Dalton freight tracks are equally compelling. Shadowy figures are often spotted along the rails, appearing briefly in the corner of the eye before vanishing when attention is focused on them. Some witnesses report seeing spectral workers, dressed in period clothing, moving with purpose along the tracks, inspecting the rails or carrying invisible tools. On occasion, ghostly freight trains are observed, faint lantern lights glowing from windows and cars slowly moving along the line. These trains seem tangible at first glance, complete with the outline of cars and the faint impression of passengers or crew, but disappear entirely when approached, leaving behind only the echo of their phantom wheels and the faint scent of smoke. Witnesses often remark on the eerie precision of these apparitions, as if the events are being replayed exactly as they happened decades ago. The landscape of the Dalton freight tracks contributes to the eerie atmosphere. The line winds through narrow valleys, wooded slopes, and abandoned industrial areas, creating pockets of shadow that amplify even the smallest movement. Evening fog and mist often settle over the rails, muting sounds and distorting light, making it difficult to distinguish ordinary objects from the paranormal. Old signal posts and rusting metal structures cast long, shifting shadows, and the quiet of the surrounding area enhances every creak of wood and rustle of leaves. Visitors often report the sensation of being watched, a feeling that grows stronger when traversing secluded sections of the tracks or walking along bends and inclines where visibility is limited. The natural environment seems to act as a stage for the spirits of the past, blending history and haunting seamlessly. Historical context sheds light on why the Dalton freight tracks are said to be haunted. The line was once crucial to transporting goods and passengers, connecting Dalton to larger networks of commerce across Georgia and the Southeast. Accidents were not uncommon. Derailments, cargo mishaps, and workplace injuries claimed lives along the tracks. Tales passed down through generations describe ghostly trains that replay accidents, spectral workers maintaining rails long after their lifetimes ended, and mysterious figures that appear and vanish at will. These stories reinforced a sense that history refuses to stay buried, manifesting instead as vivid hauntings along the abandoned tracks. Experiences reported by visitors vary in intensity. Some recount subtle signs, the rustle of movement, a cold draft, or the faint echo of a whistle in the distance. A few hikers have even claimed to see figures climbing aboard these phantom trains, sitting silently within the cars, only to vanish when the observer tries to get closer. The recurring appearance and disappearance of these trains and figures create a sensation that time itself is looping, allowing the past to intrude upon the present. Tactile phenomena are occasionally reported as well. Some visitors feel brushes against their arms or shoulders, sudden chills, or the impression of unseen bodies moving nearby. Animals, especially dogs, are often uneasy along the tracks, barking at nothing or refusing to move forward. Combined with auditory and visual phenomena, these sensations contribute to a fully immersive haunting experience, leaving many with the impression that the Dalton freight tracks are alive with unseen activity. Despite these unsettling encounters, the Dalton freight tracks remain a destination for the curious, paranormal enthusiasts, and historians. By day, the trail offers a quiet walk through a piece of local industrial history, but by night, it transforms into a stage for spectral reenactments. Ghostly trains, wandering figures, and eerie whistles bring the past vividly into the present. Visitors leave the trail with lingering impressions, the echo of a phantom train whistle, the shadow of a worker vanishing into the fog, and the awareness that some journeys along these rails never truly ended. The Brunswick Coastal Line, running along the salt-scented shores near Brunswick, Georgia, is a stretch of railroad steeped in history and legend. Though trains no longer traverse these tracks as they once did, the area is renowned for reports of paranormal activity that has persisted for generations. Locals speak quietly of ghostly figures, phantom trains, and mysterious lights that appear along the rails at night. Those who walk or drive near the coastal line after dusk often describe eerie experiences that blend the roar of the Atlantic with sounds and visions from a bygone era. The haunting seems tied to the spirits of sailors, travelers, and railroad workers who vanished long ago, their departures incomplete, leaving them bound to the line in an endless loop of spectral travel. Auditory phenomena are among the most common and unsettling experiences reported along the Brunswick coastal line. Witnesses describe hearing distant train whistles carried by the sea breeze, rising and falling as though a locomotive is approaching from far off. The whistle often has a mournful, lonely quality, echoing across the sand and through the trees that line the tracks. Many hikers and evening travelers report the rhythmic clatter of wheels on rails, accompanied by the metallic creak of couplings and the faint sound of doors opening and closing within phantom freight cars. Some even hear hushed voices and the shuffle of unseen feet along the tracks, as if the ghosts of passengers and crew are moving about their final journey. These sounds appear to have direction and intent, often increasing in intensity before abruptly ceasing, leaving the listener with the unmistakable impression of something just out of reach. Visual phenomena at the Brunswick coastal line are equally chilling. Shadowy figures are often seen moving along the tracks or standing at the edges of the coastal dunes, disappearing when approached directly. Some witnesses report seeing the forms of sailors in period attire, hats tipped and coats flapping in the ocean wind, walking purposefully along the rails or pausing as if awaiting a train that will never come. Glowing lights are a frequent occurrence, appearing in the windows of abandoned freight cars or floating above the rails, casting eerie reflections on the sand below. Occasionally, phantom trains are observed slowly traversing the coastal line, their faint lanterns illuminating silhouettes of passengers inside. These spectral locomotives move with a deliberate cadence, only to vanish before reaching the distant stations, leaving behind nothing but the sound of a fading whistle and the rolling echo of unseen wheels. The natural environment of the Brunswick coastal line amplifies the sense of unease. The tracks wind close to the shoreline, with waves crashing rhythmically against the sand and wind rustling through coastal grasses. Evening fog often drifts in from the Atlantic, muffling sounds and distorting shapes, making it difficult to discern the ordinary from the supernatural. Old signal posts, wooden ties, and remnants of freight platforms cast long, shifting shadows in the mist, creating the impression that figures are moving just beyond the edge of vision. Walkers and explorers often report feeling watched, particularly when passing through bends in the track or across low dunes, as if unseen eyes are tracking their movements and silently evaluating their intrusion. Even the wind seems to carry voices, rustling leaves and salt grasses in ways that resemble whispers or hurried footsteps. Historical accounts of the Brunswick coastal line help explain why these hauntings persist. The tracks once facilitated both commerce and passenger travel along Georgia's coast, connecting Brunswick to neighboring towns and ports. Over the years, numerous accidents occurred. Trains derailed, cargo was lost to the ocean, and travelers vanished during storms. Local lore suggests that these unfinished departures tethered the spirits of sailors, travelers, and railway workers to the coastal line. Tales passed down through generations describe ghostly trains replaying lost journeys, spectral passengers waiting eternally for departures that were never completed, and sailors pacing the tracks as if ensuring that no one else meets the fate they did. Encounters along the Brunswick coastal line range from subtle to intense. Some visitors report faint whistles or distant clattering in the darkness. Others describe fully formed spectral trains, glowing lights rolling along the rails, and figures dressed in historical attire moving with purpose. Hikers have even claimed to see sailors boarding phantom locomotives, their faces turned outward as if looking toward a destination that will never be reached. The repeated appearance and disappearance of trains and figures creates a sensation of timelessness, as though the tragic history of the line is replayed endlessly for anyone present to witness. Tactile sensations are occasionally reported by those who venture along the tracks. Cold drafts often sweep across the dunes or along the rails, brushing against arms and shoulders. Some individuals feel the presence of unseen bodies moving close by, their weight and warmth imagined yet distinct. Animals, particularly dogs, often react to the invisible presences, barking at nothing or refusing to advance along certain stretches of track. Combined with auditory and visual phenomena, these experiences heighten the impression that the Brunswick coastal line is alive with spirits, playing out events from decades past in a persistent, spectral theater. Despite the unsettling nature of these experiences, the Brunswick coastal line remains a destination for historians, ghost hunters, and adventurous visitors. By day, it offers a glimpse of coastal Georgia's industrial and maritime history. By night, however, the line becomes a stage for ghosts of sailors, travelers, and railway workers, performing departures that never reached their destinations. Visitors often leave with the echo of a phantom whistle in memory, the impression of shadowy figures vanishing into fog, and the haunting sense that the past is alive along the rails. The Valdosta Old Rails, stretching quietly through the outskirts of Valdosta, Georgia, are remnants of a bygone era when locomotives carried passengers and cargo across the region. Though the tracks have long since fallen into disuse, they remain a source of fascination and fear for locals and visitors alike. Tales of ghostly activity have persisted for decades, with reports of phantom trains, mysterious lights, and apparitions along the rails that defy explanation. Those who venture near after dusk often recount experiences that blend the tangible reality of the tracks with something altogether otherworldly. Many claim that the spirits of passengers and railway workers who perished along this line continue to linger, trapped in a spectral echo of journeys never completed. Auditory experiences along the Valdosta old rails are among the most frequently reported and unnerving. Witnesses describe the distant shriek of a train whistle cutting through the night air, carried unnaturally far and mingling with the sounds of the surrounding woods and fields. The clatter of wheels on tracks, metallic couplings snapping, and the rhythmic thrum of cars moving along rails have all been heard where no train exists. Occasionally, these phantom trains seem to approach, their whistles growing louder, only to vanish abruptly, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. Some explorers report hearing hushed conversations, voices issuing commands or chatting quietly, as though the long-dead passengers and crew are performing their routines unnoticed by the living. Cold drafts often accompany these sounds, sudden chills that sweep along the rails and unsettle even seasoned hikers. Visual phenomena are equally compelling along the old Valdosta tracks. Shadowy figures are often glimpsed, standing near the rails, appearing for a moment before fading into the darkness. Visitors have described the forms of passengers in period clothing, hats and coats, visible in the dim glow of ghostly lanterns. Some report seeing spectral trains slowly traversing the tracks, windows glowing with soft, inexplicable light, and silhouettes of people standing silently within the cars. When observers attempt to approach these trains, the apparitions vanish, leaving behind only the faint smell of smoke and the lingering echo of phantom wheels. In some accounts, ghostly lights hovered just above the rails, moving methodically as if guiding the way for invisible travelers. And the intensity of these lights sometimes grows or diminishes in tandem with the sounds of an approaching whistle. The landscape of the Valdosta old rails amplifies the eerie atmosphere. The tracks wind through open fields, wooded areas, and abandoned industrial zones, creating pockets of shadow and seclusion that heighten the sense of unease. Evening fog occasionally drifts across the line, muting sounds and distorting shapes, making it nearly impossible to distinguish between ordinary movement and the paranormal. Rusted signal posts, broken ties, and remnants of old platforms cast long, shifting shadows, enhancing the feeling that figures are moving just out of sight. Walkers often report an unsettling sensation of being watched, particularly in stretches where visibility is limited or where the tracks curve around embankments and hollows. The wind seems to carry whispers, blending naturally with the sounds of the night, leaving travelers unsure if they are hearing something real or imagined. Historical context offers insight into why the Valdosta old rails might be haunted. During its operational years, the line was a hub for commerce and travel, connecting Valdosta with nearby towns and facilitating the movement of passengers, goods, and livestock. Accidents were not uncommon. Derailments, cargo mishaps, and sudden deaths along the tracks left many lives abruptly ended. Local legends suggest that the spirits of those who perished remained tied to the rails, their unfinished journeys and unresolved business keeping them anchored to the area. Tales passed down through generations recount ghostly trains replaying their final trips, passengers waiting for departures that never occurred, and spectral workers performing tasks long after their mortal lives ended. These narratives have shaped the haunting reputation of the old line, ensuring that even modern visitors approach the tracks with caution. Encounters along the Valdosta old rails vary widely in intensity. Some report subtle phenomena, flickering lights, the faint echo of a whistle, or a cold gust of wind sweeping across the rails. Others describe fully formed apparitions, ghostly trains moving with slow deliberation, spectral passengers standing silently on platforms or inside cars, and workers inspecting tracks that have long since fallen into disrepair. Some hikers have claimed to see figures walking along the ties, appearing to perform ordinary actions before disappearing into thin air. The repeated appearance and sudden vanishing of these figures creates a sensation that time is looping, allowing the tragedies of the past to replay endlessly for anyone present to witness. Tactile sensations are occasionally experienced along the line. Visitors sometimes feel invisible presences brushing against arms or shoulders, sudden chills, or a sense of weight nearby that cannot be accounted for. Dogs and other animals often sense the invisible activity, barking or refusing to advance along certain sections of the tracks. Combined with auditory and visual phenomena, these tactile experiences reinforce the impression that the Valdosta old rails are alive with spirits, performing actions from a time long past. Despite the eerie reputation, the Valdosta old rails remain a destination for curious locals, paranormal enthusiasts, and historians. By day, the tracks offer a glimpse into the region's industrial past, with rusted rails and abandoned structures telling stories of commerce and travel. By night, the area transforms into a stage for ghostly reenactments, where spectral trains, shadowy passengers, and the echoes of lost journeys emerge from the darkness. Visitors often leave with the lingering sound of a whistle in memory, the impression of a figure vanishing into fog, and the chilling realization that the past can never truly be left behind. The Cartersville Rail, stretching quietly through the outskirts of Cartersville, Georgia, is more than a forgotten stretch of abandoned tracks. It is a corridor where history and the supernatural converge. For decades, locals and travelers have reported strange occurrences along this rail line, from ghostly lanterns swinging in the night to phantom trains that appear and vanish without warning. Visitors often speak of a pervasive sense of being watched, the distant echoes of footsteps, and shadowy figures that move along the ties as though trapped between worlds. Whether these hauntings are the remnants of tragic accidents, the spirits of workers and passengers long gone, or echoes of the past etched into the landscape, the Cartersville Rail has earned a reputation as one of Georgia's most haunted stretches of track. Auditory phenomena are among the most common experiences reported along the Cartersville Rail. Witnesses frequently describe the unmistakable sound of a train approaching, even when the line has not seen traffic for decades. The clatter of wheels over rails, the metallic snap of couplings, and the faint hiss of steam or brakes are often reported at night, carrying with them a weight of nostalgia and unease. Some travelers report hearing voices carried on the wind whispers that seem to come from the tracks themselves, issuing orders, exchanging greetings, or calling out names. These sounds often increase in volume, as if drawing closer, only to vanish abruptly, leaving those present in a stunned silence, questioning whether what they heard was real or imagined. Cold drafts frequently accompany these auditory disturbances, sweeping along the ties and brushing against visitors with a sudden chill that seems unnatural in the mild night air. Visual encounters along the Cartersville Rail are just as unsettling. Shadowy figures have been seen moving purposefully along the tracks, disappearing when approached or when the observer tries to focus on them. Some describe ghostly passengers in period attire, standing silently on platforms or along the rails, their faces turned toward invisible locomotives that never arrive. At times, travelers have reported seeing full phantom trains, complete with glowing windows and the silhouettes of passengers inside. These spectral trains move with a slow, deliberate rhythm, often disappearing just before reaching a nearby station, leaving behind the echo of a whistle and the lingering creak of wheels on iron rails. The natural setting of the Cartersville Rail amplifies the eerie atmosphere. The tracks wind through fields, wooded stretches, and abandoned industrial areas, creating pockets of shadow and isolation where visitors feel the presence of something unseen. Evening fog occasionally drifts in from nearby lowlands, muting sounds and distorting visual perception, making it difficult to distinguish between normal shadows and paranormal phenomena. Many who traverse the line report a heightened sense of awareness, as if unseen eyes follow their every step. The wind itself seems to carry whispers, rustling leaves and grasses, in a way that mimics footsteps or low murmurs, further blurring the line between reality and the supernatural. Historical accounts provide context for the hauntings along the Cartersville Rail. Once a busy line for both passengers and freight, the tracks were the site of numerous accidents and untimely deaths, derailments, industrial mishaps, and sudden fatalities among workers left many lives abruptly ended along the rails. Local lore suggests that the spirits of those who died remain bound to the tracks, eternally repeating the routines of travel and labor they were forced to abandon. Stories passed down through generations recount ghostly trains, replaying lost journeys, spectral passengers waiting for departures that never occurred, and workers performing unseen duties along the line. This combination of history and tragedy has cemented the Cartersville Rail's reputation as a site where the past refuses to rest. Encounters along the Cartersville Rail vary in intensity. Some report subtle phenomena, a flicker of light in the distance, the faint clatter of wheels on iron, or a sudden cold gust of wind. Others describe more vivid experiences, full apparitions of trains, ghostly figures standing along the tracks, and spectral workers performing tasks as though the line was still in operation. Some hikers have seen figures waving at them from the rails or nearby embankments, only to vanish when approached. These fleeting encounters create the impression that the line exists in two realities at once, with the present intersecting with the echoes of the past. Tactile sensations are sometimes reported, adding another layer to the haunting. Visitors occasionally feel the brush of unseen hands, cold drafts that seem to circle them, or a sense of pressure nearby that cannot be explained. Animals, especially dogs, often react strongly, barking at nothing or refusing to advance along certain stretches of track. These physical impressions, combined with auditory and visual phenomena, reinforce the sense that the Cartersville Rail is alive with spirits, replaying the actions of those who once walked its ties. Despite its eerie reputation, the Cartersville Rail continues to attract curious explorers, ghost hunters, and history enthusiasts. By day, it serves as a reminder of the region's industrial past, with rusted rails and abandoned structures marking the route. By night, however, it becomes a stage for ghostly reenactments, where spectral trains traverse the tracks, shadowy passengers wait silently, and whispers of long-dead workers fill the air. Visitors often leave with the memory of flickering lanterns, the echo of phantom footsteps, and the chilling sense that the line's past remains very much present. The Thomasville Freight Tracks, a stretch of abandoned rails winding through the outskirts of Thomasville, Georgia, is more than a relic of the past. It is a place where history and the supernatural intersect. Over the years, locals, hikers, and explorers have reported a range of eerie experiences along this forgotten line, from shadowy figures moving silently between the rails to sudden cold drafts that sweep across the open fields. The tracks have long been associated with inexplicable occurrences. Visitors often describe phantom train sounds echoing through the night, as though the iron rails still carry the weight of locomotives and passengers long gone. Some claim the spirits of those who perished in accidents or passed away while traveling the line linger, endlessly replaying journeys that ended far too soon. Auditory phenomena are among the most frequently reported experiences along the Thomasville freight tracks. Witnesses often hear the unmistakable sound of a train approaching, the deep rumble of wheels on rails, the metallic clank of couplings, and the hiss of steam or brakes. These sounds often appear without warning, emerging from the still night as if an unseen locomotive is making its final rounds. Sometimes, the phantom noises are accompanied by the distant echo of a train whistle or muffled voices calling out from carriages. Travelers have described the eerie sensation that these sounds are drawing closer, only to vanish abruptly, leaving the tracks silent and the observer questioning the reality of what they heard. Visual encounters along the Thomasville freight tracks add to the chilling atmosphere. Shadowy figures have been seen moving between the rails, walking with deliberate purpose before disappearing when approached. Some visitors describe seeing spectral passengers in period clothing, standing silently along the tracks, waiting for trains that no longer arrive. Flickering lights, sometimes resembling lanterns held by unseen hands, bob along the rails and cast wavering shadows across the surrounding landscape. On rare occasions, full phantom trains appear. Glowing windows reveal silhouettes of passengers inside. Yet the locomotives vanish before reaching nearby crossings or platforms. These ghostly visions create an impression of a place where the present is intertwined with echoes of the past, as though the tracks themselves are a gateway to history. The natural setting of the Thomasville freight tracks heightens the sense of unease. The line winds through overgrown fields, wooded stretches, and abandoned industrial areas, creating pockets of isolation where shadows deepen and silence amplifies every sound. Trees along the tracks sway in the wind, their branches casting twisted shadows that seem almost human. Evening fog drifts in from nearby lowlands, muffling sound and distorting vision, making it difficult to distinguish between ordinary shadows and paranormal phenomena. The abandoned signal posts, rusted rails, and decaying freight platforms appear to shift subtly in the dim light, giving the impression that the line itself is alive with unseen forces. Many visitors report an inexplicable feeling of being watched, as if the spirits of the past observe every step along the rails. Historical context provides insight into the hauntings. The Thomasville freight tracks were once a busy line for freight and passenger service. Over the years, numerous accidents occurred along this stretch, including derailments, collisions, and industrial mishaps. Several workers and travelers lost their lives, leaving the community with lingering tales of misfortune. Local legend holds that the spirits of these individuals remain bound to the tracks, eternally repeating their routines or waiting for journeys they could never complete. Ghostly locomotives, replaying lost voyages, and shadowy passengers awaiting non-existent trains have become enduring elements of these stories, capturing the imagination of those who explore the area. Encounters along the tracks vary widely in intensity. Some visitors report subtle experiences, a flicker of light in the distance, a sudden gust of cold wind, or the faint sound of wheels on rails. Others describe more vivid events, full apparitions of ghostly trains, shadowy figures pacing between the tracks, and spectral passengers standing silently, as if engaged in long-forgotten travel. Some hikers have seen figures wave at them from the embankments or crossing the rails, only for the figures to vanish when approached. These experiences leave a lasting impression, suggesting that the line exists in two realities simultaneously: the present, where nature slowly reclaims the tracks, and the past, where the spirits of the departed continue their daily routines. Physical sensations are also frequently reported. Visitors sometimes feel the brush of unseen hands, cold drafts swirling around them, or a sense of weight nearby that cannot be accounted for. Dogs and other animals often react to these presences, barking at empty stretches of track or refusing to move forward. These tactile impressions, combined with visual and auditory phenomena, reinforce the notion that the Thomasville freight tracks are alive with spirits replaying scenes from their lives, eternally tethered to the iron rails they once traveled. Despite the chilling reputation, the Thomasville freight tracks attract curious explorers, history enthusiasts, and ghost hunters alike. By day, the tracks serve as a historical artifact, a glimpse into the region's industrial past. By night, however, they become a stage for spectral reenactments. Phantom trains traverse the rails. Ghostly passengers stand silently along the tracks, and shadowy workers perform unseen tasks. Visitors often leave with memories of flickering lanterns, the echo of ghostly footsteps, and the unnerving feeling that the past is not entirely gone. The Valdosta River tracks, an abandoned stretch of rail running alongside the quiet bends of the river, have long been the source of eerie tales. Locals and travelers alike have reported strange occurrences, from spectral lights glimmering across the water to phantom train whistles that pierce the still night air. These tracks, reclaimed slowly by grass and rusting rails, seem innocent enough during the day, but as dusk falls, the area transforms into a realm where the line between the living and the spectral blurs. Witnesses claim that shadowy figures appear along the rails, moving with deliberate purpose, only to vanish when approached, leaving a lingering sense of unease that follows them for miles. Auditory phenomena dominate many experiences at the Valdosta River tracks. Several visitors have reported hearing the unmistakable sound of a train approaching from the distance, the deep rumble of wheels on rails, the clanging of metal couplings, and the hiss of brakes despite the fact that no trains have run along the line for decades. These phantom sounds often emerge without warning, echoing across the water, and are sometimes accompanied by the haunting wail of a train whistle. The sounds have been described as both near and far simultaneously, creating the sensation that a spectral locomotive is gliding across the landscape, following tracks that exist in both the past and the present. Alongside these phantom noises, sudden cold drafts frequently sweep through the riverbank, sending chills down the spines of those who wander the tracks after dark. Visual encounters are equally unnerving. Many witnesses report seeing shadowy figures along the rails, sometimes dressed in period clothing from a bygone era. These apparitions are often stationary, standing silently on the tracks, as though waiting for a train that will never arrive. Others move with purpose, pacing along the rails or disappearing behind trees, only to reappear moments later, further down the line. Some travelers have reported ghostly lights dancing across the surface of the river, reflecting as if carried by invisible hands, while others claim to see full ghost trains moving along the tracks, their windows glowing with silhouettes of passengers who vanish before reaching the riverbank. These experiences leave a lingering impression of a place caught between two realities, where the past and present coexist uneasily. The setting itself amplifies the haunting atmosphere. The Valdosta River winds through the landscape, its surface often misty in the early morning or at dusk, creating shadows and reflections that seem alive. The abandoned rails run close to the water, where trees and underbrush create pockets of shadow and isolation. The gentle rush of the river is occasionally punctuated by unexpected noises, rocks shifting, branches snapping, or the distant echo of phantom footsteps. The combination of natural beauty and eerie occurrences makes the area both enchanting and unsettling, drawing those who are curious and those who are brave enough to witness the unexplained firsthand. Historical context adds depth to the hauntings. The Valdosta River tracks were once part of a busy freight and passenger line, connecting the city to distant towns and industries along the river. Over the years, numerous accidents occurred, from derailments to fatal mishaps involving workers and travelers. Local legend holds that the spirits of those who died along the line remained bound to the tracks, eternally repeating routines and journeys that ended abruptly. The spectral train whistles and figures are said to be echoes of these tragic events, preserved by the river and the rusting iron rails. Some accounts even suggest that passengers and conductors who never reached their destinations linger along the line, visible only to those who dare to venture near after dark. Encounters at the Valdosta River tracks vary in intensity. Some visitors report subtle experiences, such as the faint flicker of lights along the water, a sudden gust of cold air, or the sensation of being watched. Others recount more vivid incidents, full apparitions of ghostly trains with shadowed passengers inside, shadowy figures pacing along the abandoned rails, and spectral lights hovering just above the river. A few have even described the feeling of phantom footsteps following them as they walk along the tracks, only to find that they are alone. Some travelers have fled in fear, unable to reconcile the haunting phenomena with the quiet beauty of the riverside environment. Physical sensations accompany these supernatural encounters. Many visitors report sudden chills, cold drafts that appear in localized areas, and the sensation of unseen hands brushing past them. Animals accompanying hikers often react to unseen presences, barking at empty stretches of track or refusing to move forward. These tactile experiences, combined with auditory and visual phenomena, reinforce the sense that the Valdosta River tracks are alive with the spirits of the past, replaying moments frozen in time. Despite its chilling reputation, the tracks continue to attract explorers, ghost hunters, and those intrigued by history. By day, the rails are a historical landmark, showing rusted iron and wooden ties reclaimed by nature. By night, the area transforms, with ghostly trains gliding along the tracks, spectral passengers standing silently, and shadowy figures walking among the riverbank trees. Visitors often leave with memories of flickering lights, distant phantom whistles, and the feeling that the past is not entirely gone. Toccoa Junction, a quiet stretch of railway in northeastern Georgia, carries a reputation that has lingered for decades. Though once a hub of activity where trains converged and travelers passed through daily, the area has long since fallen silent, leaving behind rusting rails, abandoned signals, and an air thick with stories of the unexplained. Locals whisper about the tragic train crash that occurred many years ago, an event that claimed multiple lives and left an indelible mark on the landscape. Since that day, visitors and passersby have reported a series of eerie phenomena: ghostly whistles echoing through the night, flickering lantern lights along the tracks, and shadowy figures glimpsed moving between the rails. Those who come near the junction after dusk often speak of the sensation that the past is alive, replaying itself in spectral fragments. The most frequently reported occurrence at Toccoa Junction is the sound of the phantom train whistle. Even when the tracks have lain unused for years, the sharp, mournful call of a locomotive can pierce the still night air. Witnesses describe the sound as unsettlingly close, as though a train is rushing past just beyond vision, while the rails themselves remain motionless and silent. The whistle is often accompanied by the rhythmic clatter of wheels or the faint screech of brakes, sounds that seem to grow and recede with no discernible pattern. Some visitors claim that when they turn to locate the source, there is nothing: no train, no movement, only the rusted tracks stretching into the darkness. These phantom noises are often intense enough to send shivers down the spine, leaving even seasoned explorers questioning whether the junction exists in both the present and some lingering past. Visual phenomena are equally compelling and haunting. Shadowy figures are frequently seen pacing along the rails, often dressed in period attire from the time of the original crash. These apparitions are sometimes stationary, standing in solemn silence as if reliving the final moments of the disaster. At other times, they move with deliberate purpose, walking the tracks or disappearing behind trees and reappearing further down the line. Witnesses have reported flickering lanterns appearing along the tracks, their soft glow swinging gently, casting elongated shadows across the ground. Some of these lights have been seen bobbing as though carried by unseen hands, leading visitors along the tracks before vanishing abruptly. The effect is so vivid that many describe the scene as a replay of the night of the crash, a spectral reenactment preserved in time. The junction itself enhances the haunting atmosphere. Surrounded by dense trees and open fields, the location can feel isolating, especially as evening falls and the last remnants of daylight fade. The terrain amplifies sounds, allowing whispers, footsteps, and the faint clatter of phantom trains to echo unnaturally across the area. Fog often drifts through the junction at night, rolling along the tracks and concealing movement, further heightening the sense that something unseen watches from the shadows. The combination of natural features and the historical tragedy creates an environment that is both beautiful and chilling, a place where the ordinary world seems to blur with something far older and more unsettling. Visitors' experiences vary in intensity. Some report fleeting glimpses of figures on the tracks, accompanied by the soft glow of lanterns and the distant sound of the whistle. Others recount being surrounded by more intense activity, doors of nearby abandoned signal houses swinging open, cold drafts brushing past, and the sensation of unseen presences pacing behind them. A few have described seeing full apparitions of passengers frozen in the moments just before the crash, their expressions locked in fear or shock. These encounters are often enough to compel visitors to leave the area in haste, sometimes abandoning personal items in their rush to escape the oppressive atmosphere. Physical sensations often accompany these paranormal phenomena. Sudden chills, localized cold spots, and the sensation of being touched by unseen hands are commonly reported. Animals brought along by visitors frequently react to these presences, barking or refusing to move forward along the tracks. These tactile experiences, combined with the visual and auditory phenomena, create a multidimensional encounter, leaving witnesses with the impression that the junction is alive with memories of the past. Historical context gives the hauntings additional depth. The original train crash at Toccoa Junction occurred decades ago, leaving many dead and others permanently injured. Over the years, stories have circulated of passengers who never reached their intended destinations, their spirits eternally bound to the tracks. Ghostly reenactments are said to occur nightly, with trains, passengers, and even crew appearing briefly before dissolving into mist. The flickering lanterns are thought to represent those who tried to signal for help or escape in the chaos of the crash. The combination of tragedy, loss, and the relentless passage of time has seemingly embedded the event into the very landscape, leaving echoes that the living can still perceive. Despite its chilling reputation, Toccoa Junction continues to draw visitors, history enthusiasts, paranormal investigators, and thrill-seekers alike. By day, the abandoned rails, signal houses, and surrounding landscape tell a story of a bygone era, quiet and unassuming. By night, however, the area transforms into a haunted tableau, with ghostly whistles, flickering lanterns, and shadowy figures, creating a vivid impression of the past. Those who venture to the junction often leave with memories of ethereal trains gliding along rusted tracks, of passengers frozen in time, and of the profound sense that some tragedies never truly end. Waycross Freight Line, a remnant of Georgia's once bustling railway system, holds a reputation that has lingered for generations. Though the tracks are now largely abandoned, the stories of hauntings and spectral activity have made the site a destination for those drawn to the eerie and unexplained. Locals and visitors alike recount experiences that defy ordinary explanation, with phantom footsteps, shadowy figures, and ghostly trains appearing to traverse the rails under the cover of darkness. The freight line's history, marked by long hours, hard labor, and tragic accidents, seems to echo through the landscape, leaving behind a persistent sense that the past has never truly departed. Shadows flit along the rails, sometimes moving in sync with the observer, then vanishing when looked at directly. Footsteps are commonly reported, echoing across the rails and the surrounding ballast. Yet when investigated, no one is there. These sounds are often accompanied by a heavy, tangible feeling of presence, the air seeming colder and denser than it should be. Witnesses describe the distant sound of engines chugging along the tracks, the clatter of wheels on rails, and the occasional blast of a horn. When turning to see the source, many encounter nothing more than the empty tracks stretching into the darkness. In some accounts, these spectral trains appear as faint outlines, complete with ghostly freight cars being pushed along by unseen hands. The trains move slowly, deliberately, as though laboring under the weight of decades-old cargo. Then, just as suddenly as they appear, they dissolve into mist, leaving only the echo of wheels and a lingering chill. The setting of the Waycross Freight Line amplifies the uncanny nature of these phenomena. Trees and underbrush often crowd the tracks, creating shadowed corridors where the imagination can easily take hold. Fog frequently drifts across the rails, thickening at dusk and nightfall, which lends an otherworldly quality to the landscape. Under these conditions, even ordinary noises, the snapping of twigs, the rustling of leaves can seem like part of the spectral activity, merging with more inexplicable sounds to create an immersive, unsettling experience. Many visitors have noted that the further one walks along the tracks, the stronger the sense of being followed becomes, as though the spirits of past laborers are retracing steps they once took in life. Visual encounters are varied and sometimes vivid. Some witnesses report seeing figures in period clothing, hands gripping phantom freight cars as they struggle to push them along the rails. Others glimpse entire groups of laborers moving in formation, pausing to rest, then resuming their unseen work. Lanterns, old-fashioned in design, are sometimes seen flickering along the tracks, carried by hands that are invisible. These lights seem to act as signals, marking the positions of the deceased workers or guiding the phantom trains along the rails. Observers often report an overwhelming sense of sorrow, mixed with determination, as though the spirits remain bound to their labor, unable to leave until the task is complete. Sounds at Waycross Freight Line contribute heavily to the haunted atmosphere. Besides footsteps and phantom train noises, many have heard faint voices, some muttering commands, others calling names. Occasionally, the sounds intensify into shouting or the clamor of dropped tools, only to vanish as quickly as they came. These auditory experiences often leave witnesses with a sense of urgency, a need to leave the area quickly, as though the spectral activity is drawn to the living presence nearby. Campers and hikers alike have reported sudden chills and localized cold spots, reinforcing the impression that the site is alive with lingering spirits. The history of the Waycross freight line adds context to the hauntings. During its operational years, laborers endured grueling schedules, long hours of heavy lifting, and dangerous conditions. Accidents were common, and fatalities occurred with unsettling frequency. Over time, these deaths, coupled with the grueling nature of the work, are believed to have imprinted themselves on the location. Some paranormal researchers suggest that the repeated stress, tragedy, and human toil created a residual energy, causing the echoes of past laborers' efforts to manifest in the present. The phantom trains, ghostly workers, and flickering lights are thought to be part of this phenomenon, a replay of the freight line's active days frozen in spectral form. Encounters vary in intensity. Some visitors simply feel watched or hear unexplained sounds. Others report more intense manifestations, including full apparitions of workers and phantom freight cars. A number of hikers have claimed that the spirits seem to react to their presence, pausing to observe before continuing their labor. Some even recount the experience of being gently nudged or brushed by invisible hands, as though the laborers are checking their progress or guiding the tracks themselves. These sensations leave a lasting impression, ensuring that the stories of Waycross Freight Line continue to be shared. Despite its eerie reputation, the freight line attracts those intrigued by history and the paranormal. By day, the tracks are a quiet relic, lined with rusting rails and overgrown ballast. By night, the location transforms into a place of spectral activity, where ghostly trains push phantom freight, and laborers who died long ago continue their work in silent dedication. Visitors leave with a sense of having witnessed something timeless, a fleeting glimpse into the lives and deaths of those who built the freight line and never left it behind. Noonan Rail Yard, once a hub of activity and industry, now sits largely abandoned, its tracks stretching into the shadows like silent sentinels of a bygone era. Though trains no longer rumble across its rails and the whistle of locomotives has long faded, visitors to the yard often speak of experiences that suggest a past refuses to stay buried. Flickering lights, phantom trains, and shadowy figures moving between the tracks have been reported by workers, explorers, and curious trespassers alike. Many who venture into the yard after dusk recount a palpable sense of being watched, as if unseen eyes track every movement, blending history with the supernatural in ways that defy explanation. Accounts from witnesses frequently describe the sensation of ghostly labor persisting long after the rail yard fell silent. Shadows are often seen moving deliberately along the tracks, sometimes pausing as if inspecting something invisible, only to vanish the moment one looks directly at them. These apparitions often resemble the figures of the men and women who once toiled here, carrying tools, inspecting rails, or guiding locomotives that no longer exist. The figures are typically fleeting, seen from the corner of the eye, leaving an unsettling impression of activity just beyond reach. The sense that the yard is alive with memories of its working days is heightened by the soundscape, the distant, echoing clatter of wheels, the hiss of steam, and phantom footsteps echoing along the rails, all seemingly produced by no one. Perhaps the most startling phenomenon reported at Noonan Rail Yard involves the phantom trains themselves. Observers describe faint outlines of locomotives rolling silently along the tracks, sometimes accompanied by freight cars that appear to float above the rails. The trains move with a deliberate, almost mechanical precision, though no tracks are occupied in the present day. Witnesses say that occasionally, ghostly lights flicker along the sides of the cars, suggesting lanterns carried by spectral workers, guiding their midnight journey. The sound of wheels on rails, distant whistles, and the rhythmic clanging of metal are frequently reported in unison, with these apparitions creating an auditory illusion that convinces many that the yard is still operational, though no living soul is present. Shadows moving between the rails further intensify the haunted reputation of the yard. Figures appear and disappear without warning, walking along tracks, climbing over freight, or simply standing silently at the edge of a platform. Some explorers recount the unnerving experience of following a figure only to find empty space where it should have been. The shadows often seem aware of the living, pausing their motion or changing direction when noticed, adding to the chilling sensation of being watched by entities that occupy a parallel version of the yard. Cold drafts, seemingly without source, often accompany these sightings, brushing against the skin and deepening the feeling that unseen presences are nearby. Visitors also describe auditory phenomena that defy explanation. Whispers, shouts, and the occasional clatter of tools echo across the yard, though there is no visible source. Some claim to hear commands being given in the faint tones of long-dead foremen, or the murmur of conversation among workers frozen in time. The sounds often intensify when night falls, blending with natural noises of the wind through empty buildings and creaking timbers. Many who have lingered too long report a profound sense of unease, a compulsion to leave before the sounds grow more distinct or the shadows draw closer. The history of Noonan Rail Yard offers insight into why the site might be so heavily haunted. In its prime, the yard was a center of commerce and transport, operating long hours under challenging conditions. Workers endured dangerous environments, heavy loads, and accidents that sometimes proved fatal. Those who lost their lives in the line of duty are believed by some to have left imprints on the landscape, their labor and tragedy replaying endlessly. Paranormal investigators often cite the repeated activity, combined with the intensity of human emotion in life and death, as a possible explanation for the persistent hauntings that continue to manifest in flickering lights, phantom trains, and shadowy figures. Sightings at Noonan Rail Yard vary in intensity. Some witnesses only feel a presence or catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of their eye. Others report vivid apparitions, fully formed figures pushing phantom freight cars, walking alongside spectral locomotives, or signaling to one another with ghostly lanterns. In some cases, visitors claim to feel a nudge or brush from unseen hands, as if the spirits are interacting directly with the living, checking on work left incomplete, or guiding trains along rails that are no longer used. These encounters leave a lasting impression, making the yard a focal point for local legend and paranormal intrigue. Even the environment of the rail yard contributes to its haunting. At night, the long shadows of dormant freight cars and tracks create a labyrinthine appearance, where shapes can be mistaken for moving figures. Fog often drifts in from nearby lowlands, wrapping the rails in a blanket of mist that amplifies shadows and distorts light from distant lamps or flashlights. The atmosphere is heavy with anticipation and tension, lending credence to the reports of ghostly activity and creating a space where the past feels vividly present. Despite the eerie reputation, Noonan Rail Yard attracts those drawn to history, mystery, and the paranormal. Daytime visits reveal a silent, rusting landscape of rails, platforms, and old buildings, a reminder of the labor and industry that once defined the area. At night, the yard transforms into a stage for spectral reenactments, where phantom trains roll, shadows traverse the rails, and the lingering energy of long-dead workers seems to persist in perpetual motion. The haunting is not violent, but persistent, a reminder that some histories refuse to fade, manifesting instead in subtle, chilling ways. The Valdosta-Macon line, once a bustling route connecting towns and industries, now lies abandoned, its tracks overgrown with weeds and rusting under years of neglect. Despite the quiet that blankets the rail corridor today, visitors report a chilling presence along the route, hinting that the line has not been entirely abandoned. Ghostly whistles pierce the night air, echoing along stretches of track that have not seen a train in decades. These sounds are described as both distant and unnervingly close, as if the phantom locomotives are simultaneously far down the line and right beside those who hear them. For many, the whistles are the first indication that something otherworldly lingers along the Valdosta-Macon line. Shadowy figures are frequently reported moving along the abandoned tracks. Witnesses describe fleeting glimpses of human shapes, sometimes appearing as train conductors or passengers from eras long past. The figures seem aware of the living, often pausing or shifting direction when observed. Some travelers have recounted watching a dark shape stand on a rail, framed by the dim glow of a lantern, only for it to vanish when they approached. Others have seen groups of shadows moving, as if preparing to board a train that will never come. These encounters are often accompanied by sudden gusts of wind, cold enough to chill the skin, flowing along the tracks as if the spirits themselves are moving through the air. Perhaps the most startling phenomenon along the Valdosta-Macon line is the appearance of phantom trains. Visitors report the sight of locomotives materializing out of mist or darkness, complete with ghostly freight cars or passenger coaches. The trains move silently, with wheels gliding along the tracks without producing the heavy clattering expected of steel on rail. Lights from lanterns flicker along the sides of the cars, suggesting spectral conductors and passengers aboard. Some claim to see faces pressed against windows, staring out at the empty landscape with mournful expressions. The apparitions often vanish suddenly, leaving witnesses questioning whether the trains were ever truly there. Auditory experiences accompany many sightings. In addition to ghostly whistles, travelers describe hearing the faint clatter of wheels, the hiss of steam, and distant, almost conversational murmurs carried along the tracks. Some report calls of names, shouted or whispered, echoing through the empty corridors of the rail line. These sounds can be so vivid that visitors feel as though they are witnessing the last moments of journeys interrupted, lives suspended in a liminal space between past and present. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena contributes to an overwhelming sense of presence, as if the spirits of the Valdosta-Macon line continue their routines long after their mortal existence ended. The history of the rail line sheds light on why the area is so heavily haunted. In its prime, the route was vital for transporting goods, raw materials, and passengers. Workers labored long hours under challenging conditions, facing the dangers of heavy equipment, treacherous terrain, and frequent accidents. Tragedy struck often, leaving many workers, conductors, and passengers dead or injured. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that the intensity of emotion and untimely deaths along the line left an imprint on the land, manifesting now as spectral trains, shadowy figures, and ghostly whistles. The Valdosta-Macon line, in a sense, holds on to its history, replaying fragments of lives and work that were abruptly cut short. Witness accounts vary in intensity. Some report subtle sensations, feeling of being watched, a sudden chill, or the sense of movement in the corner of their eye. Others recount vivid encounters, trains appearing and vanishing, shadowy figures walking along tracks, and inexplicable lights dancing among the rails. Some hikers have fled the area entirely, unable to endure the sensation of unseen presences moving alongside them. The consistency of these reports over decades has contributed to the line's reputation as one of the most haunted rail corridors in the region, attracting both thrill-seekers and those drawn to history and the paranormal. The environment of the Valdosta-Macon line amplifies its haunting. Overgrown weeds, decaying rail ties, and the skeletal remains of freight cars create a labyrinthine landscape where shadows are easily mistaken for figures. Fog frequently rolls in from nearby lowlands, wrapping the tracks in a ghostly veil that distorts lights and creates shifting silhouettes. Even a gentle breeze can produce whispers among the rustling weeds and trees, further blending natural and supernatural sensations. At night, the landscape transforms entirely, leaving visitors surrounded by darkness that seems to pulse with unseen activity. Many visitors have described a sense of unfinished business tied to the line. Shadowy figures appear to follow the path of the tracks, as though retracing journeys that ended abruptly. Phantom trains roll along the rails with purpose, carrying spectral passengers who never reach their intended destinations. Witnesses sometimes report fleeting interactions, such as lanterns being raised in greeting or shadows pausing as if acknowledging the living. These experiences suggest that the spirits are not malevolent but bound to the line by memory. routine, and perhaps unresolved events from the past. Despite its eerie reputation, the Valdosta-Macon line continues to draw attention. During the day, it is a quiet, decaying reminder of industrial history. A place where weeds overtake rails and rust consumes iron. By night, it becomes a stage for ghostly reenactments, where phantom trains roll silently, shadows move along the tracks, and unseen presences linger in the cold night air. For those who walk its length after dark, the experience is both haunting and mesmerizing, a glimpse into the past, suspended between history and the supernatural. Athens Freight Corridor, a stretch of abandoned tracks on the outskirts of the city, carries a reputation that unsettles both locals and curious visitors. Though trains no longer run along the rails, those who venture there after dusk often encounter experiences that defy explanation. Flickering lanterns appear without source, casting ghostly light along the overgrown tracks, while shadows seem to move deliberately, walking as if unseen passengers or laborers continue their nightly routines. The air often carries distant sounds, phantom wheels clattering, faint whistles, and the echo of footsteps that leave visitors questioning whether the corridor exists entirely in the present or if it is caught between times. Those who explore the corridor describe a palpable sense of being watched. The shadows along the tracks are not random. They appear to have purpose, moving with intent but vanishing when approached directly. Some witnesses report seeing figures resembling workers from decades past, dressed in period uniforms, carrying out tasks long forgotten. Others glimpse travelers, standing silently on platforms that have long since crumbled, waiting as if for trains that will never arrive. These apparitions give the impression that the corridor is caught in a loop, endlessly replaying the lives and routines of those who once used the tracks. Phantom trains are another common phenomenon. Observers recount seeing locomotives materialize through the night fog, their faint outlines illuminated by ghostly lantern light. Some describe carriages moving slowly along the rails, passengers visible through the windows yet detached from the living world. The sound of wheels on tracks often accompanies these sightings, along with whistles and the occasional hiss of brakes, creating a sense that history itself is repeating before the eyes of the living. Even though no trains run here anymore, the realism of these experiences can leave witnesses both awed and unsettled. Auditory phenomena at Athens Freight Corridor are particularly striking. The echo of footsteps along the tracks is a frequent report, sometimes following visitors as they explore the area. Faint whispers can be heard drifting through the air, sometimes calling names or issuing commands in voices that feel both urgent and distant. Tools clattering, chains rattling, and the low hum of unseen activity create an atmosphere in which the past feels present. These sounds often intensify after sunset, when the corridor is cloaked in shadows and the last remnants of daylight fade, leaving explorers alone with the sensations of a world overlaid by memory. The corridor's environment contributes to the haunting. Dense trees and underbrush often surround the tracks, their shadows blending with those of the apparitions. Fog can roll in unexpectedly, obscuring paths and making lantern lights appear to float in midair. Sudden cold drafts sweep through the corridor, leaving goosebumps and a chilling sense that unseen presences are nearby. Even the overgrown tracks themselves seem alive, creaking under imagined weight or reflecting the glow of ghostly lanterns that flicker in rhythm with the unseen. Figures along the rails. History is a crucial factor in the corridor's haunted reputation. Athens Freight Corridor was once a hub of commerce and travel, but accidents, derailments, and fatal mishaps left a lasting mark. Workers who perished maintaining the rails and passengers lost to tragedies are believed to have left spiritual imprints, their energy lingering in the corridor. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that these concentrated moments of trauma, combined with the isolation of the abandoned tracks, have created a zone where the past bleeds into the present, replaying scenes of labor, travel, and misfortune for anyone who dares to witness them. Visitors often describe disorientation when traversing the corridor. Shadows shift unpredictably, lantern lights flicker and vanish, and phantom sounds echo from multiple directions. Many report the sensation of being followed, cold touches on their shoulders, or footsteps that do not match their own, reinforcing the feeling that the corridor exists in a liminal space where the living and the dead coexist. Platforms that no longer exist sometimes seem solid, with figures performing tasks as if the trains of the past were still arriving and departing. Despite its eerie reputation, Athens' freight corridor continues to attract those drawn to paranormal phenomena. Ghost hunters, historians, and thrill seekers explore the tracks, hoping to glimpse a phantom train, witness a shadowy laborer, or hear the whispers carried on the wind. Campers and evening hikers often recount sudden chills, lanterns that flicker without source, and figures vanishing into the fog. Each encounter leaves a lasting impression, reinforcing the corridor's reputation as a place where history refuses to remain buried. Macon Industrial Tracks, once a bustling hub of industry and travel, now lies abandoned, its rails twisted by time and nature. Despite the absence of active trains, the area is far from silent. Visitors and locals alike have reported unsettling phenomena, suggesting that the spirits of those who once labored and traveled along these tracks remain bound to them. Phantom footsteps echo along the rails, lights flicker inexplicably, and spectral trains glide silently through the darkness, vanishing before anyone can reach them. The industrial tracks have earned a reputation as a place where history refuses to rest, replaying scenes of daily toil and tragedy in spectral form. Many witnesses describe the sensation of being watched as they wander the abandoned line. Shadows seem to shift just beyond their vision, moving with purpose along the tracks, only to disappear when approached. Some take the form of former laborers, garbed in the uniforms and work clothes of a bygone era, carrying tools or checking imaginary cargo. Others appear as ghostly passengers, standing on crumbling platforms or near rusted loading docks, waiting for trains that will never come. The weight of the past feels almost tangible, pressing in on the living with a presence both eerie and undeniable. Flickering lights are frequently reported, often appearing along platforms and warehouse windows. Lanterns ignite and extinguish without warning, casting ghostly glows across the tracks and illuminating shadowy figures for brief, unsettling moments. Visitors recount instances where a lone lantern hovers in the darkness, revealing the outline of a worker bent over invisible tasks, or a conductor signaling to a train that has long since vanished. These lights are accompanied by sudden chills and goosebumps, as if the cold air of the past itself has seeped into the present. Phantom train sounds are among the most persistent reports. The distant roar of engines, the clatter of wheels on rails, and even the faint hiss of steam create an auditory illusion that can be almost convincing. Some visitors have instinctively stepped aside, expecting a real train to rush past, only to find silence when the sounds approach. On occasion, the faint outline of a train can be glimpsed through the darkness, moving along the tracks without sound, or appearing to hover just beyond reach before disappearing into the night. These auditory and visual phenomena leave many observers shaken, as though they have stepped into a scene from a bygone era where the industrial line was alive with activity. The platforms along the Macon industrial tracks are particularly active with reports of spectral encounters. Witnesses describe ghostly conductors standing in position, holding lanterns and pretending to check tickets for passengers who no longer exist. These figures are often detailed in appearance: crisp jackets, caps tilted at precise angles, and even gloves or whistles that glint in the faint light. Some claim these conductors seem aware of their presence, meeting observers' gaze before fading into the shadows. Other reports include phantom workers loading invisible cargo, their movements deliberate and repetitive, suggesting an eternal reenactment of daily labor. Historical records help explain why the Macon industrial tracks might be haunted. The line was a critical route for freight and passengers, connecting the city to wider industrial networks. Accidents were common, with workers injured or killed during loading and maintenance, and trains derailed or colliding in ways that claimed lives. Paranormal researchers believe the intensity of these tragic events left emotional imprints along the tracks, producing the apparitions, phantom sounds, and flickering lights reported today. The corridor of rails has become a vessel for memories suspended between life and death, replaying moments frozen in time. Witness accounts vary in intensity. Some visitors experience subtle sensations, a cold breeze brushing past, an inexplicable pressure in the chest, or the faint whisper of footsteps behind them. Others encounter more dramatic phenomena, like shadowy figures marching along the tracks, spectral trains appearing and disappearing, or conductors raising lanterns from decayed platforms. These intense experiences often compel witnesses to leave immediately, reporting an overwhelming sense of being followed or observed by unseen presences. The physical environment of the tracks enhances the haunting. Overgrown vegetation, rusting rails, and crumbling platforms cast long, shifting shadows that play tricks on the mind, while dense trees and abandoned warehouses distort sound, creating echoes that seem to originate from nowhere. Fog or mist frequently creeps along the tracks, transforming ordinary shadows into ghostly figures. Even a gentle breeze can carry whispers, giving the illusion of distant voices speaking across the rail line. The combination of historical tragedy and environmental effects creates a stage ripe for spectral activity. Despite its eerie reputation, Macon Industrial Tracks draws the curious, the daring, and the paranormal-minded. Urban explorers, ghost hunters, and history enthusiasts venture along the rails seeking a glimpse of the phenomena. Daylight brings only the quiet solitude of abandoned industry, but after dark, the line transforms. Lanterns appear where none exists, shadowy workers move along the tracks, and phantom trains glide silently through the night. Visitors often leave with stories of fleeting glimpses, sudden chills, and the profound impression that history itself is alive along the tracks. Augusta River tracks, snaking along the quiet bends of the Savannah River, have long carried a reputation that goes beyond the ordinary. While once bustling with the movement of freight and travelers, the tracks now lie mostly abandoned. Yet they remain alive with stories that blur the line between past and present. Those who venture near the river after dusk often encounter phenomena that defy explanation: ghostly lights flickering along the rails, the faint clatter of wheels on rusted tracks, and the echoes of whistles long silenced. Visitors report an uncanny sensation that the history of the line refuses to remain buried, replaying itself in spectral form for anyone willing or unwilling to witness it. One of the most common experiences involves ghostly lights appearing at unpredictable intervals along the river-adjacent tracks. These lights often take the form of lanterns swinging gently in the breeze, casting an ethereal glow over the rails and revealing fleeting glimpses of figures who vanish when approached. Some witnesses describe the lights moving as if carried by unseen hands, following a rhythm reminiscent of the comings and goings of long-forgotten trains. The lights seem to act as markers of presence, signaling the spirits of laborers, conductors, and passengers who once depended on this line for their livelihoods and journeys. Alongside these mysterious illuminations, many have reported shadowy figures walking along the tracks. Some appear as workers in period clothing, bent over imaginary tasks, or carrying ghostly cargo. Others resemble passengers waiting on non-existent platforms, their outlines barely visible in the dim river light. The most unsettling encounters involve those who catch a figure waving silently from the track's edge, only to realize that no train exists to meet them. Observers often feel a chill sweep through the air at these moments, as though the boundary between the living and the dead has thinned, allowing the past to reach into the present. Phantom trains are another phenomenon commonly reported along the Augusta River tracks. Witnesses describe the faint rumble of wheels on rails and the rhythmic chug of engines, sometimes accompanied by the ghostly hiss of steam. On occasion, a full spectral train materializes, its silhouette outlined against the river's dark waters, moving silently along the tracks before vanishing without a trace. These apparitions often appear at night, especially when the river mist rises, obscuring details and creating an almost dreamlike tableau. Observers say the trains are sometimes accompanied by faint, echoing whistles that seem to call out to those who wander too close, invoking a sense of longing and melancholy. The track's proximity to the river adds an atmospheric layer that heightens the spectral experience. Mist rises from the water at twilight, curling around the rails and drifting into the surrounding woods. This haze transforms ordinary shadows into figures that appear to move with purpose. The gentle lap of the river can carry whispers, unintelligible yet haunting, making it feel as if unseen passengers are conversing just out of earshot. On nights of calm, the reflective surface of the water doubles the ghostly imagery, creating the illusion of additional lights and figures, further disorienting those who venture too far from the path. Historical tragedies associated with the Augusta River tracks seem to fuel these hauntings. The line was once a critical conduit for freight and passenger transport, with accidents, derailments, and injuries leaving indelible marks on the collective memory of the area. Workers who died in the line of duty, travelers who never reached their destinations, and families left waiting for loved ones all contribute to the lingering energy reported by modern-day visitors. Paranormal researchers suggest that these unresolved events imprint on locations, replaying over time and manifesting as spectral activity visible to those sensitive to such disturbances. Many witnesses report a sense of being observed while near the tracks, especially after dark. Shadowy forms seem to track movements, remaining just outside direct view. Some hikers and explorers recount feeling a sudden pressure on their shoulders or hearing footsteps echoing behind them along the abandoned rails. These encounters often end abruptly, with the figures vanishing into the mist or into the dark riverbank, leaving a lingering unease and the sensation that the spirits have chosen to remain unseen for a reason. The ghostly passenger phenomena are particularly striking. Visitors have described apparitions standing on the tracks, waving or gesturing as if bidding farewell, but never moving forward. These figures appear trapped in a perpetual moment of departure, endlessly replaying the actions of long-ago journeys. Observers often feel a profound sadness during these encounters, as though they are witnessing a fragment of lives paused in time, repeating rituals that can never be completed. Some report that looking directly at these figures causes them to fade instantly, leaving only the faintest imprint on memory, while a glance from the corner of the eye may reveal a fleeting wave or turn of a head. Even in daylight, the tracks maintain an unsettling quality. Rusted rails and crumbling ties stretch along the riverbank, flanked by overgrown vegetation that casts shifting shadows. The natural sounds of birds and rustling leaves occasionally blend with the echoes of phantom footsteps, creating auditory illusions that fool even the most skeptical visitor. The combination of historical tragedy, physical decay, and environmental effects contributes to a haunting that feels both natural and supernatural. A place where memory and myth converge on the banks of the Augusta River, despite or perhaps because of their eerie reputation. The Augusta River tracks continue to attract the curious, the adventurous, and those with an interest in the paranormal. Explorers come seeking evidence of spectral trains, fleeting shadows, and ghostly passengers frozen in time. Campers and hikers report being startled by sudden chills, unexplained lights, or the sensation of unseen company, often departing with stories of fleeting glimpses and lingering unease. The tracks are a site where the past is palpably alive, where the ghosts of laborers and travelers repeat their final journeys night after night, inviting witnesses to bear silent witness. Savannah Freight Corridor, stretching along the quiet edges of the city's historic industrial district, holds a reputation that few dare to challenge. Once a bustling artery of commerce and travel, the corridor is now mostly abandoned. Yet the echoes of its former life linger in ways that defy explanation. Those who wander near the tracks at dusk or after dark often report unsettling experiences: phantom footsteps clattering along the rails, flickering lanterns suspended in midair, and spectral trains gliding silently through the thick coastal fog. Witnesses speak of figures appearing just long enough to be seen before vanishing as if they were never there, leaving behind only the lingering chill of their presence. One of the most frequently reported phenomena along the corridor involves ghostly trains. Some travelers recount seeing a full locomotive, its outline dimly lit by the glow of lanterns along the cars, moving along the tracks with neither sound nor engine smoke. Other witnesses described the low, rhythmic rumble of wheels on rails and the faint hiss of brakes or steam, with no physical train in sight. These spectral locomotives often appear in the mist that rolls off the nearby Savannah River, creating a sense that the corridor itself is a liminal space where the boundary between the living and the dead is blurred. The trains seem to replay their journeys endlessly, carrying workers, travelers, and cargo long forgotten, appearing only for those willing or unfortunate enough to witness them. Lanterns are another common sight in the corridor, often flickering or swinging in impossible ways. Observers describe seeing small, glowing lights moving along the rails, stopping and starting as if carried by unseen hands. Sometimes they appear at the edge of the fog, illuminating shadowy figures who seem to be performing their daily tasks, inspecting rails, loading cargo, or checking schedules that exist only in the past. These lights often vanish when approached directly, leaving observers with only the memory of movement and a growing sense of unease. The effect is amplified at night when the mist thickens, casting the corridor in an otherworldly glow that seems to belong to no time at all. Shadowy figures walking along the tracks are another frequently reported occurrence. Some appear as laborers in period clothing, bent over in the motion of work, while others resemble travelers carrying small bundles, waiting for trains that never arrive. Many visitors report feeling as though they are being watched, noticing movement just at the edge of their vision. When they turn to look directly, the figures vanish into the fog, only to reappear moments later in a different location. This repetition, the sudden materialization and disappearance, contributes to a pervasive feeling that the corridor is alive with the presence of those who have never left, trapped in a cycle that mirrors their unfinished journeys. The corridor is not limited to visual hauntings. Auditory phenomena are equally unsettling. Phantom footsteps echo along the rails, sometimes following hikers or wandering explorers. In other cases, the sound of chains rattling or the clank of tools being dropped resonates from empty sidings. Whispers carried on the fog-laden wind are frequently reported, often unintelligible yet unmistakably human. Witnesses describe an oppressive sense of history pressing in from every side, as if the very air is heavy with memories of toil, expectation, and tragedy. Some claim to have heard voices calling their names or issuing instructions long forgotten, leaving them unnerved and eager to leave the corridor behind. The Savannah Freight Corridor's proximity to the river and surrounding wetlands amplifies its eerie atmosphere. Mist rises from the water at dusk, curling around the rails and drifting into the surrounding industrial ruins. This fog blurs the edges of perception, turning ordinary shadows into figures that appear to move with intention. Reflections on the wet rails and puddles create illusions of additional lights and forms, further confusing the senses. Even in daylight, some visitors report subtle, inexplicable movements at the periphery of vision, as though the corridor itself resists the intrusion of the living into its spectral domain. Historical tragedy is deeply embedded in the corridor, lending credibility to the hauntings in the eyes of many. Accidents, derailments, and injuries were not uncommon along the line when it was fully operational, and the stories of those who died in service or during travel remain intertwined with the corridor's reputation. Workers who fell victim to industrial accidents, travelers lost to derailments or mishaps, and families left waiting for loved ones all contribute to the lingering energy that manifests as spectral activity. Paranormal investigators suggest that such imprints of past trauma can persist in locations, replaying themselves like echoes, and Savannah Freight Corridor is considered a prime example of this phenomenon. Witnesses often report a sense of disorientation while moving through the corridor. Ghostly lights and figures appear to shift with the fog, creating illusions of movement and depth that confuse even experienced hikers. Sudden cold drafts can sweep along the rails, adding to the feeling that unseen entities are present, monitoring every step. Some describe the sensation of phantom hands grazing their shoulders or brushes of wind where nothing exists, reinforcing the belief that the corridor is alive with unseen presences. Despite its unsettling reputation, Savannah Freight Corridor continues to attract visitors seeking paranormal experiences. Explorers, photographers, and ghost hunters wander its abandoned rails, hoping to witness the lights, figures, or phantom trains firsthand. Campers and hikers often report being startled by sudden chills, whispers, or the fleeting presence of a shadowy figure. These experiences, while frightening, have cemented the corridor's place in local lore as a site where the past is not forgotten and where the spirits of workers and travelers continue their eternal round. Atlanta Rail Loop, a hidden stretch of abandoned tracks on the outskirts of the city, carries a reputation that is whispered among locals and ghost enthusiasts alike, though the rails no longer see the rumble of active trains. Those who wander near the loop after dusk often report phenomena that defy explanation. Shadowy figures appear along the tracks, lingering at the edges of fog that drifts in from the nearby wetlands, while flickering lights seem to dance across the rails without any visible source. Some witnesses describe phantom train whistles cutting through the night, sudden and sharp, echoing as though a locomotive is approaching from nowhere. Visitors claim these apparitions are not random. The ghosts of passengers, conductors, and laborers continue their nightly routines, trapped in a spectral cycle that bridges the gap between life and death. Those who explore the Atlanta Rail Loop often begin their visits with curiosity and skepticism, only to encounter experiences that unsettle even the most rational minds. Many report the sight of figures walking along the tracks, dressed in period clothing from decades past. Some appear to be laborers inspecting the rails or carrying out tasks long forgotten, while others resemble travelers, lingering with a sense of purpose or waiting as if for trains that will never arrive. The movements of these shadows are unnervingly deliberate, vanishing when approached directly but reappearing moments later elsewhere along the loop. This repetition, paired with the eerie silence punctuated by occasional ghostly noises, gives the impression that the loop exists in a space separate from normal time. The loop is particularly known for its phantom train sightings. Observers recount seeing entire locomotives materialize through the fog, their silhouettes glowing faintly in the dim light. Some describe seeing the cars moving slowly along the tracks, passengers visible through windows, yet never interacting with the living world. The rhythmic sound of wheels on rails often accompanies these sightings, along with the low hiss of brakes or the distant rumble of a train engine. In many cases, witnesses have experienced these phenomena with no logical source. No tracks have been active for years, yet the spectral trains move with startling realism, giving the sensation of reliving a moment frozen in time. Flickering lights are another hallmark of the Atlanta Rail Loop's hauntings. Small lanterns often appear suspended in midair, swinging as though carried by invisible hands. Some witnesses report seeing these lights moving along the rails or disappearing into the fog entirely. At times, the illumination from these apparitions casts shadows of figures who seem to go about their routines, inspecting cargo, signaling invisible trains, or walking along platforms that no longer exist. These visual anomalies create a disorienting experience, especially when combined with the dense mist that frequently envelops the area after sunset. Even in daylight, some visitors report noticing subtle movements at the edges of their vision, lending an omnipresent sense that the loop is watched by unseen eyes. Auditory experiences at the loop are just as unnerving. Phantom footsteps echo along the rails, sometimes following hikers or explorers through the fog. Some claim to hear the sound of tools clattering, chains rattling, or the distant voices of workers long gone. A faint whistle often punctuates the night, piercing the silence in the way only a train whistle can, leaving witnesses frozen in fear, or whispers carried on the wind add another layer of complexity, often unintelligible but undeniably human. Some report hearing their own names called, or instructions from a past era being issued in tones of authority or urgency. These sounds create a tangible sense of history, pressing down on the present, as if the energy of countless nights of work and travel is imprinted into the corridor. The environment itself amplifies the loop's eerie qualities. Low-lying fog rises from the surrounding wetlands, curling along the abandoned rails and around the decaying remnants of freight sidings. Reflections off puddles or wet rails create illusions of lights and forms that vanish when approached, further confusing the senses. Cold drafts, sudden and unexplained, sweep through the area even on warm nights, leaving visitors with goosebumps and an undeniable feeling of presence. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena ensures that anyone traversing the loop is never entirely at ease. The history of the Atlanta Rail Loop contributes to its haunted reputation. During the peak of rail activity, the corridor was home to countless accidents, derailments, and the tireless labor of workers who built and maintained the tracks. Fatal incidents involving passengers and crew left lasting impressions, and many of the spirits reported today are thought to belong to those who died tragically along the loop. Workers who perished in industrial accidents, travelers lost to derailments, and families who awaited loved ones now contribute to the lingering energy that manifests in spectral activity. Paranormal enthusiasts suggest that such imprints of past trauma, combined with the fog and abandoned structures, have created a concentrated zone of haunting where echoes of the past replay themselves for any living observer. Visitors often describe the feeling of disorientation while on the loop. Shadowy figures, flickering lights, and phantom sounds appear to shift unpredictably, making navigation difficult and intensifying the sense of unease. Many report being followed by unseen presences, feeling phantom hands brush against their shoulders, or noticing footsteps that do not correspond to their own. These experiences contribute to the notion that the loop exists in a liminal space where past and present collide, and the boundary between life and death becomes tenuous. Despite its reputation, Atlanta Rail Loop continues to attract those drawn to the paranormal. Ghost hunters, historians, and thrill seekers wander the tracks, hoping to witness a ghostly train, glimpse a shadowy laborer, or hear the whispers carried on the wind. Campers and night hikers often report sudden chills, flickering lanterns, and figures vanishing into the mist, leaving them with an enduring sense of awe and trepidation. The corridor's mixture of history, spectral phenomena, and eerie atmosphere has solidified its place in local lore as a site where the past refuses to remain buried. And there you have it, 25 haunted train tracks in Georgia, where ghosts still ride, whistles pierce the night, and shadowy figures roam the rails. These tracks remind us that some journeys never truly end, and that spirits linger where tragedy, labor, and loss once converged. If this journey into Georgia's haunted railways sent chills down your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another ghostly tale. Until next time, listen closely to the tracks, because some trains never stop, even after death.